My boyfriend destroyed my deceased grandmother's jewelry box, and I think I deserved it. When my grandmother passed away 3 years ago, she left me a few things. A quilt, a set of her old recipe cards, and a small wooden jewelry box. It wasn't fancy or valuable, but it was something she kept on her nightstand for decades. She used to let me play with the little trinkets inside when I was a kid. Plastic pearls, vintage brooches, a few real gold pieces mixed in. After she died, my mom said Grandma specifically wanted me to have it because I was the only one who ever cared about her old stuff. Fast forward to now, I'm 26, and I live with my boyfriend Tyler. We've been together for almost 2 years, and for the most part, things are fine. He's sweet, funny, and we've talked about getting engaged eventually, but lately things have been tense. Money's been tight. I've been working overtime at my marketing job, while Tyler's been between jobs for almost 5 months. He's been trying, but I'd be lying if I said it hasn't caused some resentment to bubble up. Last week, I found out he pawned his gaming console and a few of his collectibles to pay his half of the rent. I told him I appreciated it, but I could tell he was embarrassed. He's always been touchy about money, like it's a reflection of his worth. Then came the jewelry box incident. I keep Grandma's box on top of my dresser. It's not locked or anything. I just assumed no one would touch it. A few nights ago, I came home from work and saw it wasn't where I left it. I thought maybe I had moved it while cleaning, but after checking everywhere, I realized it was gone. When Tyler got home, I asked him about it. He looked instantly uncomfortable, like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. I could feel my stomach drop. He admitted he had taken it. He said, and I quote, "I just needed some quick cash, and I thought it was just costume jewelry." I don't remember what I said first, but I know I screamed. I've never yelled at him before. I told him those were my grandmother's things. Sentimental, irreplaceable. I told him he had no right to touch anything of mine, especially not something like that. He kept saying he didn't know, that he thought it was just old lady junk. When I demanded he go get it back, he told me he already did, but it was too late. The pawn shop owner had already melted some of the pieces down. He got $200 for a box of memories I'd had since childhood. I didn't speak to him for 2 days. He slept on the couch. My mom cried when I told her. She said she wished I'd never moved in with him. I wanted to agree, but a part of me also felt guilty. Here's where it gets complicated. The night before he took the jewelry box, we had gotten into a fight. I'd said some really cruel things I didn't mean, but that I said to hurt him. I told him he was lazy, that I was tired of supporting him, that my grandma would be ashamed of me for being with someone who didn't try harder. He didn't yell back. He just sat there quietly, staring at the TV. I remember thinking he didn't even care enough to fight. I stormed out and went to bed. The next morning, he was gone, and so was the box now. I keep replaying that fight in my head. I know what he did was unforgivable. He took something that meant everything to me. But part of me wonders if I pushed him to that point. Like he wanted to prove something, to get money so I'd stop calling him useless. After a week of silence, he came to me crying. He said he's been trying to make it right, that he's been saving to buy a replica box, that he contacted the pawn shop again. They managed to recover one small gold ring and a brooch that hadn't been melted yet. He gave them back to me in a Ziploc bag. I held them and cried so hard my hands shook. He kept apologizing, saying he hated himself for doing it, and I could tell he meant it. But I also couldn't look at him the same way anymore. Every time I looked at his hands, I saw him touching the box. Taking it away, I told him I needed space, and he moved out 2 days later to stay with his brother. He's been texting every day, saying he's going to replace what he can, and prove I can trust him again. But here's the thing, I don't think he can. I loved him, but the trust feels gone, still. There's this gnawing guilt that won't let me rest, because I know my words that night were cruel. I know I made him feel small and useless, and maybe that doesn't justify what he did. It doesn't. But it makes me question myself. Did I drive him to it? Or was this always who he was, and I just refused to see it until it cost me the last thing my grandmother ever gave me? I've been keeping what's left of the jewelry in a small tin now. Tucked inside my closet, I still can't throw away the empty box. Or what's left of it. The pawn shop owner gave it back after Tyler begged. The lid is cracked, the lining torn, but I keep it anyway. It's not beautiful anymore, but it's mine, and maybe in a twisted way, it's a reminder of what happens when love and desperation collide and destroy everything between them. Update. It's been almost 2 months since everything happened with the jewelry box. I didn't think I'd ever hear from Tyler again after he moved out. But life has a funny way of forcing you to face the things you're not ready to. For the first few weeks, I tried to block him out completely. I ignored his texts, his calls, even a letter he left on my windshield one morning before work. I thought I was done. I wanted to be done. But grief isn't linear. And I wasn't just grieving my grandmother's jewelry. I was grieving the person I thought Tyler was. The turning point came one night when I got home from work and found a small brown box sitting at my apartment door. No note, no text, just my name written in his handwriting. I opened it expecting something dramatic or manipulative. But instead, it was filled with old photos, not of us, but of him as a kid, school pictures, his high school graduation, even one of him and his mom when he was little. There was one short note inside. It said, "You said your grandma would be ashamed of you for being with me. Maybe she would. But my mom would be ashamed of me for what I did to you. I'm trying to be better, even if it's too late for us." I didn't cry right away. I just sat on the floor and stared at that note for what felt like hours. Then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I texted him. "I got the box," he replied almost instantly. "Thank you for not blocking me." We met a few days later at a small cafe near my work. I almost didn't go. Part of me felt stupid, like I was reopening a wound that had barely started to heal. But I needed closure. When I walked in, he looked different, tired. His hair was longer, beard a bit overgrown, and his hoodie looked like it had seen better days. But his eyes, he looked broken. He didn't try to make excuses this time. He didn't try to win me back. He just said he'd started therapy through a community program his brother told him about, and he was working part-time at a hardware store. He said he'd been putting money aside every week into a repayment jar, not to buy me gifts or win me over, but to donate to a women's shelter in my grandmother's name once it reached $200, the amount he'd gotten for the jewelry. That hit me harder than I expected. I asked him why the shelter. He said, "Because your grandma raised strong women, and I tried to tear one down." I don't think I've ever been more conflicted in my life. I wanted to hate him. I should have hated him. But there was this strange tenderness in seeing someone you loved at their lowest. Finally trying to crawl out of the hole they dug, we talked for almost 3 hours. He told me he hadn't dated anyone, that he wasn't planning to. He said he realized he'd tied too much of his self-worth to money and success, and that losing everything, including me, forced him to see that. Before I left, he handed me a small wrapped package. I told him he didn't need to, but he insisted. When I opened it, it was a hand-carved wooden box, not fancy. The edges were uneven, the varnish a little patchy, but inside he'd lined it with blue velvet. He said he'd made it himself during a woodworking class at the community center. "It's not to replace hers," he said, "but maybe it can hold what's left." I didn't know what to say. I didn't forgive him in that moment, not fully, but something inside me softened. I could see the remorse wasn't performative anymore. It was real. I took the box home, set it next to my dresser, and placed the broken jewelry box inside it. It sounds weird, I know, like I'm nesting grief inside grief, but somehow it felt right. Since then we've kept light contact, a text here and there, nothing emotional. He sent me a picture last week of the donation jar. It's already at $140. He said he'd call me when it reached $200 so I could choose the shelter with him. And maybe that's where our story ends. Not with reconciliation or a fairy tale fix, but with two people learning to live with what they broke. Some of my friends think I'm crazy for even talking to him again. My mom doesn't know we met. She'd lose it if she did. But deep down, I think my grandma, the woman who forgave everyone, even when they didn't deserve it, might have understood. I've been sleeping better lately. The guilt that used to keep me up at night feels a little lighter. And every time I open that new box and see the cracked old one inside, I think about how sometimes love doesn't survive, but it can still leave something worth keeping. Final update. It's been almost a year since everything with Tyler and my grandmother's jewelry box happened, and writing this feels like closing a chapter I didn't realize was still open. For a while things were quiet after the second time we met. We barely spoke except for a few polite texts. I focused on my job, started going to therapy myself, and moved to a smaller apartment closer to downtown. I needed a fresh start. Somewhere that didn't have ghosts in the walls. Life started to settle. I picked up pottery as a hobby, joined a weekend book club, and even started dating again. Nothing serious. Just coffee here and there, but I won't lie. Every time a guy raised his voice, even slightly, or made a joke about money, something in me tightened. That kind of betrayal doesn't just disappear. It builds a scar that flinches before your brain can process it. Then, one random afternoon in June, I got a text from Tyler. It was just a picture, a mason jar, filled to the brim with crumpled bills and coins. On the lid, he'd written, $200, done. No caption, no plea, no look at me. I've changed, just the picture. A week later, a donation receipt showed up in my mailbox. It was from the Harbor Women's Shelter, in my grandmother's name, in memory of Margaret Hayes, who believed in second chances. I just sat there and cried, ugly, messy, shoulder-shaking tears. I didn't realize how much weight I'd still been carrying until that moment. The guilt, the resentment, the sadness, all of it cracked open, and for the first time, it didn't feel like grief anymore. It felt like release. I texted him to say thank you. He replied, "It wasn't for you, it was for her. But I'm glad it brought you peace." We didn't talk for months after that. Until late August, he messaged again, asking if we could meet, not to rehash the past, but to say goodbye properly. He said he'd gotten a job offer in Oregon, a full-time position with benefits. He'd been working at the hardware store for nearly a year, and one of the regular customers, a contractor, had offered him a spot on his construction team. It was everything he'd been trying to rebuild himself for. I said yes. We met at the same cafe where we'd talked months before. It was raining, that slow, steady kind of drizzle that smells like wet asphalt and nostalgia. He looked healthier, leaner, more grounded somehow. Still Tyler, but steadier. He brought something with him. A small, square wooden frame. Inside was a picture of me and my grandmother. One he'd printed from my old Facebook photos back when we were dating. The background was faded, but our smiles were real. Around the frame's edge, he'd engraved words in tiny, uneven letters. "What's left can still be loved," he said. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I wanted to leave you something good behind this time." I didn't know what to say. I think I just whispered, "Thank you." We talked for a while, about his new job, about my pottery classes, about how different things feel when you finally stop needing to fix people to feel whole. He said he hadn't dated anyone, that he wasn't sure when he'd be ready to. He said Oregon felt like a clean slate. Before we left, he asked if he could hug me. I hesitated, then nodded. It wasn't romantic or desperate. It was quiet, like two people who had shared something painful and still somehow found gratitude in the wreckage. When he walked away, I didn't cry this time. I just sat there, sipping cold coffee, and realized that maybe forgiveness doesn't mean welcoming someone back. Sometimes it just means letting them go without hate. I went home that night and took out the new jewelry box, the one he made me, and placed the framed picture next to it. Inside the box now are the two pieces that survived the pawn shop. Grandma's gold ring and the old brooch. They shine faintly under the lamp, dull but still whole. I wear the ring sometimes when I need to feel grounded. Not as a reminder of loss, but of what I learned from it. Tyler texted me one last time before his flight. "I hope your grandma's proud of both of us now." I think she would be, and that's it. That's the end. No rekindled romance, no grand closure, just growth. Painful, messy, human growth. If I've learned anything from all of this, it's that sometimes love doesn't last forever. But decency can, and that even the people who hurt us the most can leave behind something worth keeping. Stories number 2. My husband forgave me, but I don't think he'll ever love me the same. When I tell people my husband took it well, they don't really understand what I mean. I cheated on him. I shattered everything we built. And somehow he didn't yell, didn't throw me out, didn't even cry in front of me. He just went quiet. The quiet was worse than any screaming could have been. I met my husband Aaron when I was 24 and he was 21. I liked that he was younger, but already knew what he wanted. I was working at a small marketing firm. He was a mechanic. He'd pick me up after late shifts with greasy hands and that shy smile that always made me feel safe. We got married 4 years later. Nothing fancy, courthouse, a few friends. A small dinner for a while. We were the picture of steady, simple love. Then life started feeling too steady. I got promoted, started managing a team, working long hours, traveling for conferences. Aaron stayed at the same shop, still loved it, still came home smelling like motor oil. I don't know when admiration turned into resentment, but it crept in slowly. He'd talk about saving up for a house, kids, routine stuff, and I'd feel trapped instead of excited. Then there was Liam. He was part of a partner company we worked with. Confident, funny, good at making people feel seen. I told myself he was just a friend, But we started having drinks after meetings. One night turned into a mistake. That mistake turned into months. I justified it in my head. Aaron and I had drifted apart. I felt lonely. I felt unseen. Every cliché in the book, but deep down, I knew I was destroying something that didn't deserve it. Aaron didn't suspect anything at first. He trusted me completely. The night it all came out, I wasn't caught, I confessed. Liam got transferred, and I couldn't handle the guilt. Aaron was watching TV, and I just blurted it out. I expected screaming, breaking things, maybe him packing a bag, but he didn't. He sat still, eyes fixed on the floor. When I finished talking, he said, "Okay." That was it. Just okay. For days he barely spoke. Then he told me he wasn't leaving. He said, "I made vows. I still mean them." That broke me more than anything. I begged him to yell, to hate me, to do something, but he just stayed calm, too calm. We went to therapy. He showed up to every session, listened, even comforted me when I cried. Our therapist said it was a good sign, that he was choosing to work through it. But at home, there was distance. He'd hold my hand, but it felt rehearsed. His hugs were polite. The love was there, but it was like it was behind glass. We started trying to reconnect, dates, hikes, small trips. On the surface, things looked better. Friends even commented on how strong we seemed. But I could feel it, the resentment humming under every quiet moment. He never mentioned Liam again. Never asked questions, never brought up the affair. It was like he locked it away somewhere inside and refused to open that door. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. and found him sitting on the couch in the dark, scrolling through old photos on his phone. Our wedding, our first apartment, birthdays. I asked what he was doing, and he said, "Just remembering who we were." He smiled a little, but it didn't reach his eyes. I went back to bed and cried into my pillow. I know he loves me in some way, but I can feel the difference. Like he's performing the part of a husband instead of living it. We still talk about the future, but he says things like, "If we're still together," or "We'll see." It's subtle. But I notice every time I've cut off all contact with Liam. I deleted everything, changed my number, even left my job to get away from that entire chapter of my life. I thought maybe showing Aaron how much I wanted to fix things would matter. But some days it feels like he's already decided. He's staying. But he's gone. I keep trying to bring it up, to talk about how he feels. But he brushes it off. "I'm fine," he says. "We're fine." But we're not. I can feel the wall between us. And it's my fault it's there. I hate that the person I hurt most is the one still holding me up. We had dinner with his sister last week, and she hugged him a little tighter than usual when we left. I think she knows. Maybe everyone does. I see it in the way people look at us. Pity mixed with judgment. The truth is, he did take it well. Too well. But that's what scares me. Because when someone takes pain that quietly, it doesn't disappear. It grows roots. It spreads. And I can feel it in the way he looks at me. Like he's trying to find the version of me he used to love. And she's just gone. If I could undo it, I would. Every second of it. I know how pathetic that sounds, but it's true. I ruined a good man because I wanted to feel something new. And now I'm living with the version of him that still shows up. Still says, "Love you," before bed. But doesn't mean it the same way. Sometimes when he's half asleep, he still pulls me close like he used to. I hold on to him like it's the last time because maybe it is. Maybe one day he'll wake up and realize staying was just another way of leaving update. It's been half a year since I first wrote about what happened between Aaron and me. I wish I could say things have gotten better, but different might be a more honest word. There are moments that feel almost normal, and others that make me realize how far we still are from what we used to be. After my confession, we both agreed to keep going to therapy. It helped, at least in the beginning. It gave us structure, a reason to talk instead of walking on eggshells. Our therapist, Marianne, is patient and grounded, the kind of person who can sit in silence for a full minute and somehow make it feel productive. She keeps reminding us that healing doesn't happen in straight lines, that sometimes it looks like progress one week and total regression the next. That's pretty much what our life has been. Aaron still doesn't raise his voice. He never says anything cruel, but it's like he's edited himself down to essentials. Polite, consistent, detached. He's become incredibly kind to me in a way that feels mechanical. He brings me coffee every morning, texts when he's leaving work, kisses my forehead before bed, all the right gestures. None of the warmth that used to live inside them. I don't think he means to be cold. I think this is just how he survives it. I've started working part-time at a smaller firm. The change has been good for me, even if it came from guilt. I make less money, but I come home early, cook more, try to be present, Aaron noticed. One night he said, "You seem calmer lately." I told him it's because I'm finally slowing down. He smiled, a real one this time, and said, "That's good. I missed this version of you. It felt like progress. For a second, I thought maybe we were turning a corner." Then, about a month ago, he went to visit his parents alone for the weekend. He said they needed help with the barn roof. Normally I'd go too, but he said it'd be easier if I stayed behind since I had work. I didn't think much of it, until I saw a message pop up on his iPad while he was gone. It was from his mom. "We're sorry she couldn't come. We'll see you both next time." I don't know why, but my stomach dropped. He told them I didn't want to come. When he came home, he was quiet again. I asked if everything was okay. He said, "Yeah, just tired." But something in his tone was off. I could feel it. That night, I told him I saw the message from his mom. I didn't mean to sound accusatory. I just wanted to understand why he said that. He sighed, rubbed his face, and said, "Because I didn't want to explain why you weren't there. They don't need to know everything, do they?" He was right, technically, but it still hurt. It's small things like that that keep showing me how far apart we've drifted. He's still here, still sleeping next to me every night, but the distance between us feels like a whole ocean. The hardest part is that I can see how much he's trying to forgive me. Not because he wants to forget, but because he doesn't want to become bitter. That's who he is. He doesn't want to hate me, and I think that's what's killing him the most. We've stopped talking about the affair altogether. Marianne encouraged us to move forward, not backward, and for a while that made sense. But lately I feel like we skipped a step. There are questions he never asked, feelings he never said out loud. Sometimes, I wish he'd just tell me everything he really thinks. Let it out. Let it burn. Maybe then we could rebuild from something honest instead of this polite emptiness. Last week, we went to dinner with friends. It was one of those casual nights. Shared appetizers, jokes, too many drinks. At one point, someone asked Aaron how married life was going. He laughed and said, "Oh, you know, ups and downs." Everyone chuckled. But when I looked at him, his eyes were somewhere else. That one small look told me everything. When we got home, I asked him if he meant what he said. He told me, "I meant it's life. Things happen. We're still standing." I don't think he meant to sound distant, but it landed like a door closing. We still have good days. We took a road trip last month, just the two of us. No destination, no plans. It felt almost like before. We laughed, listened to music, even held hands without thinking about it. But the next morning, when I woke up in the motel room, he was sitting outside smoking, staring at the sunrise. He quit smoking 3 years ago. I didn't say anything. The truth is, I think Aaron's staying because leaving would feel like failure. He's the kind of man who keeps promises. Even when it costs him, I used to love that about him. Now, it just makes me feel guilty. I love him. More now than I probably ever did before. But it's a desperate kind of love. The kind that comes from realizing you destroyed something pure and can't ever rebuild it exactly the same way. Some nights, I think about suggesting a separation. Not because I want one, but because I think he deserves to know what freedom feels like again. But I'm too much of a coward to say it out loud. The other day, he found an old photo of us from our first anniversary. We were sitting on the hood of his car, laughing, eating cheap ice cream. He showed it to me and said quietly, "We were kids." I said, "We were happy." He nodded. "Yeah, that too. And that's what our marriage feels like now. A quiet acknowledgement of something that once was, and maybe can't ever be again. I still wear my ring. He still wears his. We still say love you every night before bed. But I think we both know that sometimes love isn't enough to erase what's been done. Sometimes, it's just what keeps you from completely falling apart. Final update. A year has passed since I first told the internet that I cheated on my husband, and he took it well. I wish I could say this update ends with redemption or a fresh start, but real life isn't built for tidy endings. It's quieter than that, sadder too. Aaron and I are no longer together. We didn't explode. We just dissolved, slowly. Like sugar in warm water, it happened in small, invisible moments over months. He'd start spending more weekends at his parents' house, helping with things. He took longer shifts at the shop, said it helped him clear his head. We'd still have dinner together, still say love you, still do laundry and errands like a team. But everything felt rehearsed. There was no spark left to keep pretending we were okay. The breaking point came on a random Tuesday night in February. We were sitting on the couch watching some crime documentary, both half distracted. Out of nowhere, Aaron muted the TV and said, "Can I ask you something honest?" I said yes. He looked me straight in the eye and asked, "If I said I wanted to leave, would you stop me?" My throat went dry. I couldn't speak at first. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even sad. He just looked tired, like he'd been carrying something heavy for too long and finally set it down. I told him, "No, I wouldn't stop you." He nodded. "Okay." Then he unmuted the TV and we finished the episode like nothing happened. But the next morning, his wedding ring was on the kitchen counter next to a note that said, "I'll come by for my stuff this weekend. No accusations, no blame, just finality." He moved in with his brother for a while before getting an apartment across town. I didn't fight it. I didn't beg. I cried. Hard. And often. But I let him go because deep down I knew that was the kindest thing I could do. For the first few months we kept in touch about practical things. Bills. The house. What to do with the dog. He kept her. She adores him. Our texts were civil. Almost businesslike. Then the messages got fewer and fewer. The last one I sent was on his birthday. He thanked me for remembering and said he hoped I was doing okay. I told him I was trying. He never replied. I see him sometimes by accident. Once at the grocery store, once at a gas station. Both times he smiled politely, asked how I'd been, and kept the conversation short. He looks good. Healthier. Lighter. I think he's finally at peace. I can't say the same for myself. I'm still in the house. It's quieter now. I've painted the walls, changed the furniture, but there's no escaping the ghosts that live here. The kitchen still smells faintly like his coffee. The closet has a dent in the wall from where he used to lean his guitar. I keep thinking about how full this place once felt, and how empty it is now. I went back to therapy on my own. Marianne helped me understand something I didn't before. That forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Aaron forgave me in his own quiet way. He just couldn't stay, and that's okay. He gave me more grace than I deserved. I've also stopped hating myself quite as much, not because I've excused what I did, but because guilt isn't the same thing as growth. I've learned that loving someone means respecting their pain, even if it means losing them. Sometimes late at night I scroll through our old photos. There's one from our wedding that always catches me. He's looking at me like I'm the only person in the world. I can't look at it too long. It hurts, but it also reminds me that what we had was real. I destroyed it, but it was real. He started dating someone new a few months ago. A friend told me I thought I'd spiral when I heard it. But I didn't. I just sat with it for a while. She seems kind. She's a nurse, according to social media. She posted a picture of them hiking last month, and he's smiling in that same way he used to when things were simple. I hope she never gives him a reason to question that smile. As for me, I'm still figuring out who I am without him. I've started taking weekend trips alone, something I never did before. I read more, cook new things, try not to drown in regret. Some days I feel okay. Even hopeful other days, I still reach over in bed expecting to find him there. I don't know if that will ever stop. People like to say time heals everything, but it doesn't. It just makes the pain quieter, manageable. You learn to carry it differently. The last time Aaron and I spoke was 3 weeks ago. He came by to pick up some old mail. We stood in the driveway. Awkward at first, but then he said, "You look good. You seem lighter." I told him therapy helps. He smiled and said, "Good. I'm glad you're doing better." Before he left, he added, "I hope you forgive yourself someday." I wanted to tell him I'm working on it, but the words got stuck, so I just nodded. When he drove away, I stood there until his car disappeared. Then I went inside and sat on the couch where we used to sit together. The same couch where he once asked me if I'd stop him from leaving. I realized that maybe that was the moment he'd already decided. This past year taught me that love can survive betrayal, but not always in the way we want it to. Sometimes it survives as kindness, or closure, or quiet understanding. That's what we have now. A strange kind of peace that lives where our marriage used to be. And while it's not the ending I dreamed of, it's the one we earned. Stories number 3. My shelter dog wasn't what they promised. When I walked into the shelter that afternoon, I was nervous, but excited. I'd been wanting a dog for months. Something to keep me company. To make the house feel a little less empty after my breakup. I'd done my research, checked adoption websites, even bought toys and a bed ahead of time. So when I saw Milo sitting in his kennel, tail wagging and big brown eyes locked on me, I thought maybe fate was finally cutting me a break. The shelter worker, a woman named Tracy, greeted me with a big smile. "Oh, Milo's a sweetheart," she said immediately. He's gentle, calm, great with other dogs, and already house-trained. He's honestly one of our easiest dogs." She opened the kennel, and Milo trotted out, pressing his nose against my hand. He was smaller than I expected, a pit lab mix, maybe 35 pounds. His coat was shiny, and he had that goofy grin that melts you on sight. I sat on the floor and he climbed halfway into my lap. Tracy laughed. "See? Total love bug. You're going to have no issues with him." I asked all the right questions. Was he good on a leash? Did he bark a lot? How was he around kids or other dogs? Tracy kept assuring me he was the perfect family dog. She even mentioned he was returned once only because the adopter had to move suddenly. That should have been a red flag. But I brushed it off. I signed the papers, paid the adoption fee, and brought him home that same day. At first, everything seemed fine. Milo was quiet on the drive home. Curious but calm when we arrived. He sniffed every corner of the house. Did a few zoomies around the living room, then curled up on the couch like he'd been there forever. I remember thinking, wow, I got lucky. But that first night, things started feeling off around 2 a.m. I woke up to this low growling sound. Milo was standing in the hallway, hackles up, staring at the front door. Nothing was outside, I checked. But even after I told him it was fine, he just kept growling. For nearly 10 minutes, before finally lying down again. The next morning, he refused to go near my neighbor, Danielle, when she stopped by to say hi. He barked so loud I had to pull him inside. Danielle gave me a polite but wary smile. "He's protective," she said. "That's good, I guess." I tried to laugh it off, but my stomach twisted a little. The following week, things got worse. Milo would bark uncontrollably anytime someone walked by the house. Kids, mail carriers, joggers, even cars. Once, when a delivery driver dropped off a package, Milo lunged so hard at the door that he ripped part of the curtain down. I called the shelter to ask if maybe he had a trauma history or special triggers. A man named Rick answered and told me he didn't see anything like that in Milo's file. "Probably just adjusting," he said. "Give him time." So I did, but soon, Milo started guarding things. First it was his food, then his toys, then the couch. If I tried to sit next to him when he had his favorite bone, he'd freeze and growl, that low, warning kind of growl that makes your skin crawl. I tried all the gentle training tricks I could find online, but it didn't help much. One day, my friend Lucas came over to help fix a leaking pipe. When he walked in, Milo went ballistic, snarling, barking, snapping. I had to drag him to another room. Lucas looked shaken. Man, that dog's not just nervous. He's aggressive. That night, I sat on the floor with Milo, scratching behind his ears while he leaned against me like nothing had happened. I couldn't stay mad at him. I told myself he just had a rough past. Maybe he needed patience. Maybe love would fix it. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shelter hadn't told me the whole truth. A week later, I decided to dig deeper. I looked up Milo's microchip number and contacted the vet listed on his previous record. The woman on the phone hesitated when I asked about his history. "We're actually not supposed to share details," she said, "but just so you know, Milo's been rehomed more than once. Last time was for behavioral issues. I hung up and just sat there, staring at Milo while he chewed quietly on a rope toy. I felt angry, not at him, but at the shelter. They'd lied. They'd painted this picture of a perfect, easy dog just to get him out the door. Still, part of me wondered, what would have happened if they hadn't? Would he still be sitting in that kennel, waiting for someone to take a chance on him? Would he have eventually been euthanized? The thought made me sick, so I doubled down. I hired a trainer named Megan, who specialized in reactive dogs. The first session, she watched Milo carefully, then turned to me and said, "He's not a bad dog. He's anxious. He's been failed before." That sentence hit me hard. We worked for months. Slowly, Milo learned commands, built trust, and started behaving better. He still had his moments, but the growling stopped, the lunging got rarer, the barking mellowed into alertness instead of panic. One afternoon, a little boy from down the street dropped his soccer ball into my yard. I froze when Milo ran toward him. But instead of barking or biting, Milo stopped, sniffed the ball, and wagged his tail. The boy giggled. "He's nice," I almost cried. I don't know if the shelter did the right thing or not. They lied, no question. They told me he was easy when he wasn't. But if they'd told the truth, I probably wouldn't have adopted him. Now I can't imagine life without him. Milo sleeps at the foot of my bed, follows me everywhere. and greets me every day like it's the best day ever. He's still imperfect, still a little scared of loud noises, still weird around strangers. But he's my dog, my complicated, loyal, loving dog. Sometimes I think back to that day at the shelter. Maybe they saw something I didn't, not just a nervous dog, but a dog who could be good if someone gave him a chance. Maybe the lie was a way of saving him, and maybe I'm okay with that. Update. It's been about 10 months since I first brought Milo home, and I can honestly say my life, and his, look completely different now. I wanted to share an update because so many of you messaged me asking how things turned out after my first post. Back then, I was exhausted, frustrated, and honestly unsure if I could handle him now. I wake up every morning to that same goofy grin, his tail thumping against the floor like a drum, and I realize I wouldn't trade any of it for the world. But getting here wasn't simple. After the post, I doubled down on training Megan. The trainer I mentioned started coming twice a week. We worked on desensitization, leash reactivity, and structured routines. She also taught me something crucial, that I wasn't training a bad dog. I was trying to build trust with one who'd been let down over and over again. At first, progress felt glacial. There were days Milo regressed. Days when he'd bark for an hour straight at every noise outside, or refuse to let anyone but me near his toys. But for every bad day, there were small victories. Like the first time he walked past another dog without growling, or the day he let my neighbor Danielle pet him through the fence. That one made me tear up. Danielle, the same neighbor he once terrified, now waves at him every morning. Sometimes she even brings her beagle over, and Milo, well, he tolerates her, which, if you knew where we started, is practically a miracle. The real turning point, though, came around month 5. I had invited a few friends over for a small barbecue. Nothing big, just burgers and beers in the backyard. Normally, I'd keep Milo inside for something like that, but Megan suggested I try supervised exposure. So I kept him on a long leash, brought out his bed and toys, and crossed my fingers. At first he was tense, his body stiff, ears perked, scanning everyone like they were suspects. But then Lucas, the same friend he once barked at uncontrollably, sat down on the grass near him and gently tossed him a treat. Milo hesitated, then took it. 10 minutes later, he was lying at Lucas's feet, head resting on his shoe. That was the moment I realized he trusted people again. After that day, everything shifted. It's like something clicked in his mind. Oh, not everyone is going to hurt me. He started warming up faster to new faces, barking less at the door, even playing fetch at the park without panic. A few months ago, I took him back to the vet for a checkup. The same clinic that had treated him before. The vet tech recognized him right away. Milo? Oh my gosh, he looks amazing. You'd never believe he's the same dog. That hit me harder than I expected. When we got home that day, I sat with him on the porch and thought about the shelter again. About Tracy and how she'd told me he was perfect. At the time, I thought she'd lied just to get him adopted, but now, I wondered if she'd seen a different kind of truth. Maybe she knew he wasn't easy, but she also knew he had potential. That he'd thrive with the right person. Still, I wanted closure, so a few weeks ago, I went back to the shelter. I brought Milo with me, mostly out of curiosity. The moment we walked in, Tracy looked up from the front desk and gasped, "Milo? Ah, no way." Her face lit up when she saw him wagging his tail instead of cowering. She knelt down, and to my surprise, Milo walked right up to her and licked her hand. She looked at me, eyes glassy. "He looks so happy." "You did a great job." I told her about everything. The training, the setbacks, the progress, and then I asked her the question that had been sitting on my chest for nearly a year. "Why did you tell me he was easy?" She sighed, leaned against the counter, and said quietly, "Because if I told you the truth, you might have walked away. Most people do. And he'd already been returned twice. He was weeks away from being put on the euthanasia list. I didn't know what to say." She went on, "We never want to lie, but sometimes we have to believe in hope more than the record. You were his best chance." I just nodded, feeling this strange mix of anger and gratitude swirling inside me. I understood now, even if I didn't completely forgive it before I left. Tracy asked if she could take a photo for the shelter's Happy Tales wall. She crouched down, snapped a picture of me and Milo, me kneeling beside him, one hand on his collar, both of us looking at the camera. When she showed me the picture, I almost didn't recognize us. I looked calmer. Milo looked safe. On the way home, I stopped at a park we'd never been to before. I let Milo run off leash in the fenced area. The wind was cool, leaves tumbling across the grass, and for once he didn't bark at anything. He just ran, free, happy, confident. That's when it hit me. Maybe the shelter didn't lie to make him more adoptable. Maybe they lied to make me more hopeful, to help me see something I wouldn't have seen otherwise. Because they were right. He's not easy, he's not perfect, but he's everything I needed these days. Milo and I volunteer together at the same shelter. We go once a week, and he sits beside me while I talk to new potential adopters. Sometimes I watch him approach nervous dogs in their kennels, tail wagging, and I swear he knows exactly how they feel. Tracy told me last week, you know, some people just save a dog, but you two saved each other. I think she's right. Milo may have come into my life because of a lie, but the love that's grown from it, that's as real as it gets. Final update. It's been almost 2 years since I brought Milo home, and I still catch myself staring at him sometimes, just in awe of how far he's come. How far we've come. If you read my earlier posts, you know our story started in a place of confusion and frustration. I thought the shelter had lied to me, and in a way they had. But over these 2 years, I've learned that what I once saw as deception was actually something else. Faith. Faith that someone would see past fear and imperfection, and give this dog a chance, and that someone ended up being me. A lot has changed since then. Milo's no longer the anxious, growling, jumpy dog he used to be. He's still got quirks. He's terrified of thunderstorms and has this weird habit of burying socks in the couch cushions. But the aggression, the constant tension, the endless barking, it's all gone. These days, he wakes me up every morning by gently nudging my arm with his nose. Then he waits for me to open my eyes before flopping his whole body across my chest like a 35-pound blanket. Every single morning he's my best friend, my alarm clock, my peace. After that visit to the shelter last year, I started volunteering regularly. At first, it was just walking dogs, helping with cleaning, little stuff. But one day, Tracy asked if I'd be willing to talk to new adopters, the ones interested in the hard dogs, the ones everyone else skipped over. I didn't even hesitate. That first day, I sat with a couple, Evan and Rachel, who were considering adopting a nervous German shepherd named Luna. They told me they were hesitant because the file said anxiety issues. I laughed softly and told them about Milo's first week home, the growling, the sleepless nights, the doubt. Then I told them about how love and patience can change everything. 2 weeks later they came back, not just to thank me, but to show me pictures of Luna sleeping beside their toddler. That moment, it broke me in the best way. Now, I help lead the shelter's new Second Chances program, pairing dogs with volunteers who specialize in behavior training before adoption. It's something Tracy and I built from scratch. She said it was inspired by my story with Milo. We wanted to give other difficult dogs the same chance, and it's working. Milo's basically the unofficial mascot now. Whenever new adopters visit, Tracy points to the Happy Tails wall. There's a big photo of Milo and me with a caption underneath. Some bonds are worth the work. The shelter even made him a little bandana that says Ambassadog on it. He wears it proudly. A few months ago, I had one of those full-circle moments. A young woman named Claire came into the shelter crying, saying she couldn't handle her new rescue dog anymore. He's too reactive, she said. He hates everyone. I think I made a mistake. I asked her to sit down and tell me everything. She described behavior that sounded exactly like Milo's first months. The fear, the barking, the hopelessness. When she finished, I called Milo over. He came trotting up, calm and happy, tail wagging like he was born to comfort her. Claire reached out tentatively, and he licked her hand. She started sobbing. I told her our story, every messy, frustrating, beautiful part of it. By the time I finished, she smiled through her tears and said, "Okay, I'll keep trying." That was 5 months ago. Last week, she sent me a photo. Her dog curled up beside her on the couch. Eyes peaceful, her message just said, "You were right. It was worth it." I've kept that message pinned on my phone ever since. As for Milo, he's thriving. We go hiking every weekend. Sometimes with Danielle and her beagle. He's learned how to swim, though he still hates getting his face wet. He's got a favorite park, a favorite spot on the couch, and a growing list of human friends. But the best thing? He trusts, fully, completely. A few nights ago, there was a thunderstorm. One of those loud ones that rattle the windows. I used to have to comfort him through those, but this time, he just climbed into my lap, sighed, and fell asleep. I sat there in the dim light, hand resting on his back, feeling his steady heartbeat. And I thought about everything. The fear, the anger, the tears, the doubt, all the nights I wondered if I was in over my head. All the days I wanted to give up. I'm so glad I didn't. Sometimes, I still replay that conversation with Tracy in my mind. The one where she admitted they hadn't told me the full truth. Back then, I thought her words were manipulative. Now I see them differently. She didn't lie to me. She lied for him, for his chance, and because of that, a scared, reactive shelter dog found a home, and I found something I didn't even know I needed. Purpose. I used to think Milo was the one who needed saving. Now I know he saved me too these days. Whenever someone at the shelter asks me why I keep doing this, why I spend so much time working with problem dogs, I just smile and say, because someone once lied to me in the best way possible. Then I look down at Milo, my loyal, goofy, imperfect best friend, and he looks back up at me like he understands every word. And maybe deep down he does. Stories number 4. My friend blamed me for ruining her baby shower. I honestly didn't expect the whole thing to blow up the way it did. What was supposed to be a sweet, happy surprise turned into a full-blown mess that nearly ended a 10-year friendship. I still can't tell if I did the wrong thing or if people are just overreacting, but here's what happened. So, my best friend Hannah has been pregnant with her first baby, and everyone in our group has been over the moon excited for her. She's the kind of person who lights up every room she's in. Funny, dramatic, always a little extra. She's the first in our circle to have a baby, so naturally everyone wanted to make it special. A few months ago, her sister Rachel started planning a surprise baby shower. It was supposed to be this big Pinterest-worthy event. Balloons, themed cupcakes, a mocktail bar, the works. Rachel even created a private group chat on Facebook called Operation Baby Sprinkle. Don't ask me why she called it that. I was in charge of decorations and helping pick a venue. Everything was supposed to stay top secret. Hannah thought she was just having a casual lunch with Rachel that day, and then everyone would pop out and yell, "Surprise! Sounds perfect, right?" Except things started going off the rails about a week before the party. Hannah called me one night sounding a little suspicious. She said Rachel had been acting weird, and that she had a feeling there might be some kind of surprise happening soon. I tried to deflect, saying something like, "Oh, maybe she's just stressed or busy," but Hannah kept pressing. She's always been intuitive like that. Then 2 days later, I got a text from Rachel in the group chat. "Emergency. Do not let Hannah see any of our posts or stories. Someone slipped up. She might know about the shower." Apparently one of Rachel's cousins, Lindsay, posted a photo on her Instagram story showing the venue decorations, and she tagged Rachel and used the hashtag #BabyShowerForHannah. It stayed up for 3 hours before someone told her to delete it. You can probably see where this is going. The next day, I stopped by Hannah's house to drop off some baby clothes I'd found on sale. She looked at me with that little smirk she gets and said, "So, is there something I should know about this weekend?" I froze. I didn't want to outright lie, but I also didn't want to ruin Rachel's big plan. I said, "What do you mean?" and tried to laugh it off. Then Hannah pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot, the Instagram post. "This looks like my name, doesn't it?" she said, raising an eyebrow. I was caught, totally cornered. I told her I honestly didn't know much, but that I was sure Rachel just wanted to do something nice for her. I tried to keep it vague, but she wasn't buying it. She kept pressing until I finally said, "Okay, fine, yes, there was supposed to be something, but I don't know any details." That part was true. I didn't tell her everything. I didn't mention the venue, the theme, or who was coming. I just confirmed what she already knew. She nodded, looking half amused and half annoyed. Well, that's kind of sweet, I guess. But now I have to pretend I'm surprised? I figured that would be the end of it. But oh, no. On the day of the baby shower, everyone gathered at the venue early to set up. It was a cozy community hall that Rachel had transformed into this pastel dream. Giant teddy bears, floral centerpieces, a dessert table shaped like a crib. It looked incredible. People were buzzing with excitement. Rachel was practically vibrating. She kept saying, "She's going to cry when she walks in. She's going to lose it." When Hannah arrived, she walked in smiling. Not shocked, not confused, just kind of softly smiling like she already knew. Everyone yelled surprise anyway, and she clapped her hands, laughed, and said, "Oh my God, you guys. I totally didn't see this coming. It was obviously fake." The energy in the room shifted. People started side-eyeing each other. Rachel's smile froze on her face. I tried to enjoy the moment, but the tension was thick. After about an hour, Rachel pulled me aside and hissed, You told her, didn't you? I tried to explain that I hadn't told her. She already knew from the Instagram post. I just confirmed what she'd already seen, but Rachel wasn't hearing it. She said, "You could have lied. You could have said it was fake. You ruined the whole surprise." Later that night, after everyone went home, Hannah texted me to thank me for the decorations. She said, "It was beautiful, even if I already knew." I think Rachel was more upset than I was. I told her Rachel was just disappointed because she worked so hard on it. Hannah replied, "Yeah, I get it. But she shouldn't be mad at you for being honest. It's not your fault Lindsay can't keep secrets." I thought that was that, except Rachel didn't speak to me for almost 2 weeks. When she finally did, it was through a curt text. "You need to learn when to keep your mouth shut. That wasn't your secret to tell." I felt horrible. I didn't mean to ruin anything. I just didn't want to flat out lie to Hannah's face when she already knew. And it's not like I gave her every detail. I just acknowledged what was obvious. Things eventually smoothed over. Kind of. Rachel and I are civil again, but it's not the same. She stopped inviting me to little family get-togethers. Hannah tries to keep things neutral, but I can tell she feels caught in the middle. Last weekend, at Hannah's baby sprinkle for her second child, Rachel made this offhand comment while handing out cupcakes. "Let's just hope no one ruins this surprise too." Everyone laughed, but it was one of those laughs where you can feel the sting underneath. I smiled and said nothing, even though my chest burned. I still don't know if I was wrong. Maybe I should have lied to protect the surprise. Maybe I should have said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." But lying has never sat right with me, especially not to someone I love. In the end, Hannah got her beautiful shower. The baby is healthy. Everyone moved on. But part of me still wonders if that one small moment of honesty was worth the friendship strain it caused. Sometimes when I look back, I can still hear Rachel's voice in my head. "You ruined the surprise," and maybe in a way I did, but at least I didn't ruin my integrity. Update. It's been almost a year since Hannah's baby shower fiasco, and I honestly didn't think I'd still be thinking about it this much, but that day managed to stick to me like glue. Not because of the argument, but because of everything that happened afterward. When I wrote the first post, things between me and Rachel were tense. We weren't fighting, but we weren't friends either. Every time we were in the same room, the air felt heavy. She'd smile politely, but you could tell it was one of those tight, forced smiles people wear when they haven't truly forgiven you. Meanwhile, Hannah was adjusting to motherhood, and she had way more important things on her plate. Between late-night feedings, diaper blowouts, and trying to navigate new mom life, she didn't have time to referee adult drama. But still, I could tell the tension bothered her. I'd go visit, bring coffee, fold laundry with her while she talked about baby sleep schedules. Sometimes she'd bring up her sister, usually with a sigh. "Rachel still thinks you told me everything," she'd say, "but I know you didn't." I appreciated that she believed me. I really did. But it still didn't fix the awkwardness every time I saw Rachel. The big shift came around the holidays. Hannah and Rachel decided to throw a small Christmas get-together for close friends and family, mostly to introduce the baby. Ellie, to everyone. I almost didn't go. I thought it would be easier to stay home, but Hannah sent me a text the morning of, "Please come. It wouldn't feel right without you." So I went. When I walked in, Rachel greeted me at the door. Her smile was genuine this time. She handed me a mug of hot chocolate and said, "Hey, I'm glad you came." It felt like peace. Or at least a truce. The night went surprisingly well. Everyone laughed, passed Ellie around like she was a celebrity, and Rachel even complimented the cookies I'd brought. At one point, after everyone had eaten and was lounging around, Hannah brought up the baby shower story again, totally unprompted. She said, laughing, "Remember when my surprise shower wasn't a surprise?" Everyone chuckled, even Rachel. But then Hannah added, "Honestly, it was still perfect. And if it weren't for that mix-up, I probably wouldn't have realized how much work you all put into it." I felt really loved that day. Rachel gave a small smile. "Yeah," she said softly, "it was a good day, even with the hiccup." Then she looked at me and said, "And I guess I might have overreacted back then." It was such a small sentence, but it hit me like a weight being lifted off my chest. I told her, "You didn't overreact. You just cared a lot, I get it, that was it." No dramatic reconciliation, no tearful hug. Just two people quietly deciding to move past something that had been sitting between them for months. After that, things really did start to shift. Rachel started inviting me to more family stuff again. Brunches, game nights, birthdays. She even asked for my help planning Ellie's first birthday party, which, trust me, I triple-checked to make sure this one wasn't supposed to be a surprise for anyone. This time, everything went smoothly. At one point during the party, while we were hanging up decorations, Rachel looked over and said, "I think I just got too caught up in trying to make everything perfect. I wanted to surprise her so badly. I forgot it wasn't really about me. I told her I understood, because, honestly, I did." After becoming a mom, Hannah had become the center of attention, and I think Rachel just wanted one thing she could control, one way to make her sister feel special. When the surprise got ruined, it probably felt like her effort didn't matter anymore, but it did. The truth is, Hannah's shower was still beautiful. The photos are framed all over her house. She still talks about how loved she felt that day. The fact that the surprise part fell apart didn't take away from what it meant, and I think Rachel eventually realized that too. Now, almost a year later, the three of us are close again. Closer, actually. There's this sense of honesty that wasn't there before. We learned that keeping secrets, even well-intentioned ones, can backfire in ways you don't expect. A few weeks ago, we all went out to brunch, and Hannah told us she's pregnant again. I swear, Rachel and I both froze at the same time, and Hannah just burst out laughing. "Don't worry," she said. "No surprises this time." We all laughed until we cried, but as funny as it was, that moment felt like the final chapter closing on all the weirdness from before. Later that afternoon, Rachel sent me a text that just said, "Thanks for being patient with me. You were never the bad guy. I see that now." I didn't even know how to reply at first. I just sent back a little heart emoji, and that was enough. Sometimes friendships go through rough patches that you don't even realize are testing the foundation. I think that's what this was. A test of patience, communication, and forgiveness. If I've learned anything from all this, it's that honesty doesn't always feel good in the moment, but it has a way of cleaning the air over time. I'd rather be remembered as the friend who told the truth too soon than the one who let a lie drag on too long. Now when I think back to that baby shower, I don't feel the sting anymore. I just remember the laughter, the decorations, and Hannah's face when she walked into that room full of love. Surprise or not, sometimes the moment doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. And this one, it was final update. It's been just over 3 years since the whole baby shower fiasco, and it feels strange to even call it that now. What once felt like a friendship-ending disaster has become one of those stories we laugh about over wine and snacks. The kind that gets retold at every gathering because it reminds us how far we've come. Life has changed a lot since then. Hannah now has 2 little ones. Ellie is 3, and her baby boy, Noah, just turned 1. Rachel and I are both part of their village, and sometimes I forget there was ever tension between us. In fact, if you asked anyone in our circle now, they'd never believe there was a time Rachel barely spoke to me. But I remember it, and maybe that's why I value what we have now even more. After my last update, things between me and Rachel really started to heal. Helping plan Ellie's first birthday was a big step, but it was what came after that truly changed our relationship. One afternoon, a few months later, Rachel asked if I wanted to grab coffee, just the 2 of us. It was the first time she'd done that in over a year. We sat outside a little cafe downtown, and after some small talk, she said, "You know, I was unfair to you. I was so caught up in trying to make things perfect for Hannah that when it went wrong, I needed someone to blame." It was quiet for a second. I could tell it wasn't easy for her to admit. I told her, "I get it. You just wanted everything to go right." She smiled. "Yeah, but sometimes I forget things don't have to go right to still be good." That conversation changed everything. Since then, we've built this easy, genuine friendship that didn't exist before. One where we can be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. When Hannah got pregnant with her second baby, she told both of us right away, no big reveal, no secrecy, just a group chat message that said, "Round 2, here we go," followed by a dozen baby emojis. And this time, Rachel insisted, "No surprises. I'm not going through that again." We all laughed. Still, we wanted to do something meaningful, so we planned a small welcome baby brunch. Simple, relaxed, and open. Hannah knew about it, helped pick the menu, and even joked that she wanted 0 surprises and maximum pastries. It ended up being perfect. At that brunch, something kind of full circle happened. While Hannah was holding Noah and Ellie was running around in sparkly sneakers, Rachel clinked her glass and said, "You know, I've been thinking about that first shower," Hannah groaned. "Oh God, not this again," Rachel laughed. No, I mean it. It was messy and awkward, and I was mad for dumb reasons. But looking back, it showed me who actually shows up for me. And for Hannah. Even when things go sideways. She looked at me. You did. I felt this warm, heavy lump in my throat. I wasn't expecting her to say that out loud. Especially in front of everyone. Hannah grinned and said, "You two are going to make me cry in front of the quiche." We all laughed. But it was one of those moments that hit deeper than anyone wanted to admit. It was like this quiet acknowledgement that we'd all grown up a little. These days, the three of us talk almost daily. We've become the kind of friends who share grocery lists, babysit for each other, and know exactly how the other takes their coffee. When Hannah had a rough patch of postpartum depression after Noah was born, it was Rachel and I who tag-teamed, one cooking, one cleaning, both making sure she wasn't alone. We never said it out loud, but that time cemented everything. It's funny. All that drama started because of a secret, and now our friendship works because there are no more secrets. We're brutally honest with each other in the best way. We tell the truth, even when it's awkward. Especially when it's awkward. Last month, Hannah hosted a little backyard party for Ellie's 3rd birthday. There were kids running everywhere, bubble machines going wild, and Rachel manning the grill like she was born for it. At one point, someone new, a co-worker of Hannah's, asked how we all met. Hannah and Rachel looked at me and burst out laughing. "Oh," Hannah said, smirking, "you're going to love this one." "It started with a ruined surprise," Rachel chimed in. "Yeah, she blew my big moment. I was so mad I didn't talk to her for weeks." Then I added, "And now I'm the godmother to both her niece and nephew." We all cracked up. It was such a small, silly exchange, but it kind of summed up everything. How something that once caused so much hurt became this shared story that connects us even more. I think back sometimes to that moment years ago, when Hannah looked at me and said, "So, is there something I should know?" And how guilty I felt afterward. How Rachel's words, "You ruined the surprise," replayed in my head for months. Now, I can finally look at it with peace. Because the truth is, yeah, maybe I did ruin a surprise, but I also started something else. A different kind of friendship. One that's rooted in honesty, not perfection. Life's messy. Surprises get spoiled, plans fall apart. People say things they don't mean. But when you care about someone enough, you find your way back. That's what we did. The other night, Rachel and I were sitting on Hannah's porch, watching the kids chase fireflies while Hannah rocked Noah to sleep. Rachel handed me a glass of wine and said, "You know, if that baby shower hadn't gone wrong, we probably wouldn't be sitting here like this." And she was right. Sometimes, what feels like a disaster is just the beginning of something better. So, if anyone ever asks me whether I regret telling Hannah the truth that day, I'd say no. Not even for a second, because it didn't ruin her surprise. It just rewrote it into a story we'll be telling for the rest of our lives. Stories number 5, my body still hurts because of what he did to me. I never thought I'd be the kind of person writing about something like this, but I've been sitting with this pain, physical and emotional, for almost 2 years now. And it's eating me alive. I can't talk about it with my family, and my friends tiptoe around it. Maybe writing it out will help me breathe again. I met Mark when I was 25. He was confident, charming in a messy sort of way. I liked that he made me laugh, that he wasn't afraid to tease me, that he had this protective streak that made me feel safe. We moved fast. Within a year, we were living together. I got pregnant the year after that. When I found out, I was scared, but happy. We weren't married, but we'd been talking about a future, and it felt like the next step. Mark was thrilled at first. He started building a crib, showing me baby name lists, telling his friends he was going to be the best damn dad in the world. I believed him. Then things changed, slowly, but enough that I couldn't ignore it. He started getting controlling about small things. What I ate, what I wore, even who I texted. He said it was because he cared about me and the baby. But it didn't feel like care. It felt like control. He didn't like me going out with my coworkers. Didn't like me visiting my mom without him. Every disagreement turned into a fight. I kept telling myself he was just stressed, that it was normal for new dads to freak out. But the fights got uglier. When I was 7 months pregnant, he shoved me during an argument. It wasn't hard enough to knock me down, but it scared me, he cried afterward. Begged for forgiveness. Promised it would never happen again. I wanted to believe him, so I did. A few weeks later, he got angry again. This time because I told him to stop yelling at our dog. He pushed me harder. I fell backward and hit the side of a table. I remember the sound more than the pain. The thud, the silence after, and then the panic. I was rushed to the hospital. The doctor said I was lucky the baby was still okay, but I'd developed complications, my pelvic area was injured, and they warned me that a natural delivery might be dangerous for both of us. I'd probably need a C-section when they told me I felt numb. I remember staring at the ultrasound screen and thinking, this isn't what I imagined. Mark showed up at the hospital crying again. He said he didn't mean it, that he'd lost control. He swore he'd get help, that he loved me and our baby. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him he'd ruined everything, but I couldn't. I was too exhausted, the rest of my pregnancy. I stayed with my mom. He called every day, trying to make things right, saying he'd been going to anger management. I didn't know what to believe. When the time came, I had the C-section. It was supposed to be safe, but there were complications. I lost a lot of blood. I remember the nurse saying something about trauma from earlier injuries, and realizing she meant him. Our son, Caleb, was born healthy, thank God. But my recovery was rough, my incision got infected, my muscles didn't heal right. The doctors later told me that because of the damage to my pelvis, I might never be able to deliver naturally again. I couldn't stop crying when I heard that. It wasn't just about the physical part, it was about what it meant. That something he did to me changed my body permanently. Mark wanted to be there after the birth. But I couldn't let him. Every time he walked into the room, my body would tense. I didn't trust him anymore. He got defensive, said I was overreacting, said he'd already paid for his mistake. That phrase stuck with me. His mistake, like what he did, was just bad luck. He left 2 months after Caleb was born. We tried couples therapy, but it didn't matter. I couldn't look at him without seeing the table, the fall, the panic. It's been almost 2 years now. Caleb is the light of my life. He has Mark's smile, which is both beautiful and unbearable. Mark sees him on weekends. He's better with Caleb than he ever was with me, and I try to be grateful for that. But sometimes when I see them together, I feel this ache in my chest, not jealousy, but loss. My body never fully recovered. My doctor says scar tissue makes future pregnancies risky. I can't lift heavy things for long. Sometimes, when I roll over at night, pain shoots through my side like a cruel reminder. People talk about forgiveness like it's some noble thing, but I don't know if I'll ever get there. How do you forgive someone for changing the shape of your life? For taking away the way you were supposed to bring your child into the world? I still dream about that night sometimes. Not the fall, but the look on his face right after. That flicker of fear, not for me, but for himself. I think that's when I stopped loving him. I've started dating again recently. Slowly, carefully, I told one guy about my scar, about the surgery, about why I can't have a natural birth. He just said, "You survived something awful." "That's what matters," I cried when he said that. Not because it fixed anything, but because it was the first time someone looked at me and didn't see damage. Just strength. I don't know what my future looks like yet. I don't know if I'll ever have another child or another serious relationship. But I do know that I'm done apologizing for surviving. Because what happened wasn't my fault. It wasn't a mistake. It was violence. And I'm finally learning to call it what it is. I can't have a natural birth because of him. But I can have a future that's mine alone. That's something he can't take from me. Update. It's been a year since I shared my story. And sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed when I wrote it. I was still living half in fear, half in guilt, trying to convince myself that what happened wasn't as bad as it felt. But it was violence, it was control, and it left marks I'll carry forever. Some on my body, most in my mind. Caleb is 2 now. He's funny, wild, obsessed with dinosaurs, and already asking too many questions for his age. I tell everyone he saved me, and I mean that. If I hadn't gotten pregnant, I might never have seen what Mark was truly capable of. Caleb gave me clarity. He gave me a reason to walk away and never look back. For the first few months after everything, Mark tried to play the part of a changed man. He went to therapy for a while, brought flowers to my mom's house, told me he'd grown. But every conversation we had came with that same quiet manipulation. He'd say things like, "You know I never meant to hurt you," or "You've punished me enough." He wanted forgiveness, but not accountability. He still sees Caleb, but only through supervised visits now. That change came after one weekend when he brought Caleb home with a bruise on his arm. It wasn't serious, but it was enough for me to panic. When I asked what happened, Mark said Caleb fell off the couch. The story didn't sit right. My lawyer filed for limited visitation, and the court approved it after reviewing the history. Mark was furious, but I didn't care. I wasn't risking it. Since then, I've built a quieter, steadier life. My mom moved in with me for a while to help, and that changed everything. Having someone in the house again, someone who didn't make me flinch when they walked into a room, was healing in ways I didn't expect. She's retired now, and she spends half her time spoiling Caleb rotten. I don't think she'll ever forgive Mark either. Physically, I've made some progress. The pain isn't constant anymore, though it still flares up when I do too much. I've learned to listen to my body, to slow down. My OB told me last month that, with enough healing and the right doctor, I might be able to have another baby one day. I cried when she said that. Not because I'm sure I want to, but because it felt like getting a small piece of myself back. Emotionally, healing's been harder. I still have nightmares sometimes. In them, I'm back on that floor, the room spinning, my body in pain. I wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, but then I hear Caleb's sleepy breathing through the baby monitor. And I remind myself, we're safe now. I started trauma therapy 6 months ago. My therapist, Dana, doesn't let me minimize things the way I used to. The first few sessions, I kept saying it wasn't that bad or I should have left sooner. She stopped me and said, "You don't have to grade your pain to justify it." That sentence has been sitting with me ever since. I also joined a support group for survivors of domestic violence. I was terrified at first. I thought my story wasn't serious enough. Then I sat in that circle and heard women describe things that sounded just like mine. The control, the guilt, the moment they realized love had turned into fear. It made me feel less alone. A few months ago, I met someone new. His name's Ryan. We met through a friend from work. And he's the complete opposite of Mark. Gentle, patient, quiet in the best way. I told him about my scar early on. Before things got serious, he didn't flinch. He just said, "You've been through hell. You don't owe me an explanation." That kind of kindness still feels foreign to me, but I'm learning to accept it. He's been amazing with Caleb. Never oversteps, never rushes me. The first time Caleb fell and scraped his knee, Ryan just crouched down, helped him up and said, "Hey buddy, you're okay." That moment nearly broke me, because it was so normal. That's all I ever wanted. I'm not naive enough to think everything's fixed. There are still days when I feel anger boiling up. When I see a news story about another woman hurt by someone she trusted and want to scream. But there are also days filled with laughter, with tiny hands grabbing mine, with quiet mornings where the only sound is Caleb babbling to his stuffed animals. Those are the days I hold on to. A few weeks ago, I ran into Mark at the grocery store. It was the first time I'd seen him in almost 6 months. He looked tired, worn out. He tried to make small talk, asked how Caleb was, said he missed seeing him more. I told him he should have thought about that before he decided anger was more important than love. He didn't say anything after that, just nodded and walked away. It didn't feel triumphant, it just felt over, like the final thread had finally snapped. Sometimes I still think about the version of me that existed before all this. The one who didn't flinch when someone raised their voice. The one who believed that love could fix everything. I miss her. But I also know she wouldn't have survived what came after. The person I am now may be scarred. But she's strong, she's careful, she's free. I can't have a natural birth because of him. That's still true. But every day, I remind myself that he didn't take everything. He didn't take my motherhood, or my will, or my chance at love. He just left a mark. And I'm finally learning how to live with it. Not under it. Final update. I wasn't sure I'd ever come back here. But tonight, after putting Caleb to bed, I found myself scrolling through the post I wrote years ago. It feels like reading someone else's life. I recognize her pain, her guilt, her exhaustion, but she feels distant now. I think that's what healing really looks like. It's not forgetting. It's remembering without breaking. Caleb is 5 now. He just started kindergarten last month. He's fearless and funny, with this little half grin that melts people instantly. Watching him walk into school with his oversized backpack and that confident stride made me realize something. I did it. We made it. We survived. Mark hasn't been in our lives much lately. After the court limited his visitation, he started showing up less and less. Eventually, he stopped altogether. At first, I waited for him to call. I thought maybe he'd fight harder to see Caleb, but he didn't. He sent birthday gifts for the first 2 years, then nothing. I used to see that as another form of rejection, but now I see it as relief. His absence is the safest gift he's ever given us. Legally, I'm still tied to him in small ways. Mostly paperwork and child support that barely arrives. But emotionally, he's gone. I stopped saying his name around Caleb. When my son asks about his dad, I tell him the truth in pieces, that his dad loved him but couldn't be the kind of person we needed. One day, I'll tell him more. For now, I just say, "You're safe. You're loved," because that's what matters. I moved out of the old house 2 years ago. I couldn't stand the memories that clung to those walls, the spot where I fell, the sound of the door slamming. I used to tell myself the house would lose its ghosts if I just repainted or rearranged the furniture. But ghosts don't care about paint. They live in your ribs until you stop feeding them fear. Now we live in a small townhouse in a quiet neighborhood. It's nothing fancy, but it's ours. Caleb has a tiny backyard where he digs for fossils. On weekends, we bake cookies and get flour everywhere. There's laughter here again. Ryan's still in our lives. We've been together for 3 years now. I took things slow, painfully slow. But he never rushed me. He moved in last spring after I realized I wasn't scared anymore. That was the moment I knew I was ready. The fear didn't disappear overnight. It faded with time, replaced by trust that felt earned. Not forced. He's amazing with Caleb. He reads to him every night, builds Lego towers like it's an Olympic sport, and never tries to replace anyone. He just shows up, constantly, steadily. That's what love feels like now, steady. Not thrilling or unpredictable, just safe. A few months ago, we had a talk about having a baby together. For a long time, I thought I couldn't do it again. I told myself my body wasn't strong enough, that I wasn't brave enough. But my doctor gave me good news. With proper monitoring and care, it might be possible. I cried the whole way home after that appointment. Ryan didn't say much. He just held me and whispered, "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." We haven't decided yet, but for the first time, I know the decision will come from hope, not fear. That's new for me. The physical scars are still there. The C-section line, the tension in my hips on bad days, the little reminder that my body had to heal around something it didn't choose. But I've stopped seeing those scars as shameful. They're just proof that I lived through something that tried to destroy me, and didn't. I've gone back to school part-time to finish my degree in social work. My therapist once said survivors often end up helping others, not because they have to, but because they know how it feels to be lost and scared. She was right. I want to work with women who think they're trapped, who think what's happening to them is their fault. I want to look them in the eyes and tell them, "You can leave, you can heal, you are not broken beyond repair." Sometimes when Caleb's asleep, I still think about that night, the one that changed everything. But now when the memory surfaces, it doesn't crush me. It just reminds me of how far I've come. I used to carry that night like a weight on my back. Now it's more like a scar on my skin. Part of me, but no longer defining me. I've forgiven myself for staying as long as I did. That took the longest. I used to replay every sign I ignored, every moment I excused him, every time I said, "It's fine," when it wasn't. But I know now that I stayed because I wanted to believe love could fix him. I wanted to believe the person I fell for still existed under all that anger. It took me years to understand that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. As for Mark, I don't hate him anymore. Hate was another chain that kept me tied to him. I don't forgive him either. Not in the way people talk about forgiveness. I just don't let him take up space in my head. He's a chapter that closed itself, and I've stopped rereading it. The last time I heard from him was a text about 6 months ago. He wrote, "Hope you and Caleb are doing okay." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He doesn't get access to the peace I built from the ruins he left. The other day, Ryan and I took Caleb to the beach. It was one of those perfect days. Blue sky, wind in your hair, salt in the air. Caleb ran into the waves, laughing, his tiny footprints washing away behind him. I remember standing there watching him, and realizing that I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of Mark, not of my past, not even of my body. I still can't have a natural birth. That's a fact. But it's not the headline of my life anymore. The real story is that I'm still here, still healing, still finding joy in the life I rebuilt from ashes. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. Stories number 6. My parents kicked me out when I was 16 years old. After 4 days and 3 nights, my dad found me and took me back home. I don't really care about them now that they're getting older. When I tell people I don't really have a relationship with my parents, they usually assume they were abusive or absent. But it wasn't that simple. My parents, Mark and Linda, were what I'd call conditional parents. They loved me when I behaved the way they wanted. When I didn't, that love disappeared fast. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. My dad worked as a mechanic and my mom stayed home most of my childhood. I was their only kid, They weren't monsters. We had dinners together, went to church on Sundays, celebrated birthdays. But underneath that, there was this unspoken rule. I had to be perfect, straight A's, polite, obedient, grateful. And when I fell short, they'd make sure I knew I'd disappointed them. It started getting bad when I turned 15. That's when I began testing boundaries like most teenagers do. I dyed a streak of my hair blue, got caught skipping one class, and started hanging out with a group of kids my mom called trouble. They weren't bad. We listened to music, skateboarded downtown, and talked about getting out of our boring town. But to my parents, it was rebellion. One night, I came home 30 minutes past curfew. My dad was waiting in the living room. The kind of silence that made your stomach drop. He didn't yell. He didn't have to. He just said, "You don't live under this roof if you can't follow our rules." I thought he was bluffing. I said something like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." I was 16, full of that teenage defiance that thinks it's invincible. He got up, walked to the front door and said, "Then don't." I still remember the cold air when he opened it. My mom stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, her face hard. She said, "Maybe a few nights outside will teach you respect." I thought they'd calm down if I left for a while, so I grabbed my backpack and went. I didn't even take my phone charger. At first, it felt like a weird adventure. I went to my friend Kyle's place, told him what happened, and he let me crash on his couch. His parents were out of town for the weekend, so no one knew. We ate leftover pizza, played Xbox, and joked about me being a runaway. But by the second night, it stopped feeling funny. Kyle's parents came home early. His mom took one look at me and said, "Honey, does your family know where you are?" I said yes, but she didn't buy it. She told me I couldn't stay. I tried calling my parents. No answer, not even voicemail. I left a text saying, "I'm sorry, can I come home?" Nothing, so I left. I spent the next 2 nights outside. It was March. Cold enough that your fingers go numb if you don't keep moving. I hid in a bus shelter the first night, curled up with my backpack as a pillow. I could hear cars passing, but no one stopped. The next morning, I went to the gas station, bought a granola bar with some coins I had, and sat behind the building until the sun came up. I thought about going to the police, but I was terrified they'd call my parents and I'd get in even more trouble. I told myself they just needed time to cool off. By the third night, I hadn't eaten since that granola bar. I was dizzy, my throat dry, my body aching from the cold. I found a 24-hour laundromat that was warm and sat in the corner pretending to wait for someone. A lady asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. She gave me a soda anyway. I fell asleep on the plastic chair and woke up to my dad standing in front of me. He looked awful, dark circles, red eyes. He said, "Get in the truck." I didn't argue. I just followed him. The ride home was silent, except for the sound of the heater blowing too hard. When we pulled into the driveway, my mom was waiting at the door. She didn't hug me. She just said, "You ready to behave now?" I nodded. I didn't cry, not then. They didn't talk about it again. No apologies, no acknowledgement. It was like those 4 days never happened. My dad took my phone until I earned it back. And my mom made me go to every church service that month. I remember sitting in the pew listening to the sermon about forgiveness and thinking, does that go both ways? After that, something in me shut off. I stopped fighting back. I got good grades, came home on time, smiled when they wanted me to smile. I counted the days until graduation. When I turned 18, I packed my stuff and left for college in Cincinnati. My parents acted proud, told people I was turning into a responsible young man. But inside, I was just free. Years passed. I finished school, got a job in IT, met my girlfriend Rachel, and moved to Indianapolis. My parents and I talked maybe twice a year, birthdays, holidays, the occasional just checking in text from my mom. My dad would sometimes send chain emails or political memes, but that was it. They never apologized. I never asked them to. Now they're in their 60s. My dad's back is bad from years at the shop, and my mom's got arthritis. Last month, my mom called and said, "We're getting older, you know. We'd like to see you more. You don't want to wait until it's too late." I didn't say what I was thinking. You already made it too late. I told her I'd try to visit, but I didn't. I keep finding reasons not to go. Rachel says I should at least try to have a relationship, that I'll regret it when they're gone. But I can't find that feeling in me. When I think about them aging, I don't feel sadness. I feel nothing. Sometimes I wonder if that makes me cold. But then I remember being 16, shivering behind a gas station, wondering if my parents even missed me. I remember the way my mom's face looked when she said, maybe a few nights outside will teach you respect. 4 days, 3 nights, 16 years old. They chose to teach me a lesson instead of protecting me, and maybe I learned it, but not the one they wanted. The lesson was, love can be taken away, so I learned not to need it from them now. When they call and ask how I'm doing, I keep it polite and short. Work's fine, Rachel's fine, yeah, I'm busy, maybe next month. Then I hang up and feel nothing but relief. I guess this is what happens when you raise your kid with conditions. Eventually they stop trying to earn your love, and when you get old and want it back, it's just not there anymore. Update: it's been a year since I wrote about my parents kicking me out when I was 16, and I guess life has a strange way of forcing you to face things you thought you buried for good. When I posted my story, I didn't expect much. I just needed to get it off my chest. Reading people's comments was strange. Some said my parents were monsters. Others told me I needed therapy. A few said maybe I'd regret my distance one day. At the time, I shrugged it off. I told myself I didn't care. And honestly, I believed that. But things changed this spring. It started when my dad had a heart attack. My mom called me from the hospital, her voice shaky but still oddly composed. "Your father's in the ICU," she said. "You should probably come." That word, probably, hung in the air like a test I didn't want to take. Rachel looked at me and said, "You don't have to go, but you'll hate yourself if you don't." So I went. The drive back to my hometown felt like time travel in the worst way. Same gas stations, same billboards, same sinking feeling in my stomach. When I pulled into the hospital parking lot, I just sat there for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel. I hadn't seen my parents in over 3 years. When I finally walked into that hospital room, I saw my dad, thinner, older, pale, tubes, wires, that rhythmic beeping sound that feels too calm for what it represents. My mom was sitting beside him, her hair gray now, hands fidgeting with the corner of a blanket. She looked up and said, "You came." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. My dad opened his eyes, saw me, and I swear, for a second he looked like he wanted to cry. But he didn't. He just said, "Hey, kiddo." And just like that, I wasn't 30 anymore. I was 16 again, standing in the doorway, begging to come home. We talked awkwardly. Small talk, work, the weather, sports, nothing real. The nurse came in, checked his vitals, and left. My mom asked if I wanted coffee. I said no. When I left that night, I felt this weird heaviness. Not anger, not anymore. Just this deep, tired sadness. My dad recovered slowly. A week later, he was back home. My mom called a few times asking if I'd visit again. I did once, about a month later. He was sitting on the porch, wrapped in a flannel blanket, sipping coffee. When he saw me, he smiled like nothing had ever happened. He said, "You know, I've thought a lot about that time when you ran off." I froze. I didn't know where he was going with it. He sighed and said, "We thought we were teaching you a lesson, but we were the ones who needed to learn one." I just sat there, staring at him. For years I'd imagined that moment, the apology, the acknowledgement. I thought it would feel like healing, but it didn't. It felt like being handed a picture of something that already died. I told him, "I was scared. I thought you didn't love me." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I know, I was angry and stupid. I never stopped looking for you those 4 days." He trailed off. I didn't sleep. I wanted to believe him. Maybe part of me did, but the other part, the 16-year-old me, was still outside in the cold, waiting for someone to open the door. My mom came out halfway through the conversation, carrying lemonade. She sat down, pretending to be casual, but I could tell she'd been listening from inside. She said, "We did what we thought was right at the time." That sentence hit me like a slap. She didn't mean it cruelly, but it was like she still couldn't admit it was wrong. Just what they thought was right. We talked for a bit longer, mostly about his health and her garden. When I left, my dad hugged me. My mom didn't. She just said, "Don't be a stranger." On the drive back, I cried for the first time in years. Not because I forgave them, but because I finally realized forgiveness wasn't what I needed. What I needed was permission to stop waiting for them to be different. Since then, I've been going to therapy. I started after Rachel gently suggested it again. At first, I told my therapist I didn't have trauma, just some family stuff. But when I told her about those 4 days at 16, she didn't say anything for a while. Then she said, "That's abandonment." "You know," I argued. "They didn't mean to abandon me. They thought they were teaching me," she said. Intent doesn't erase impact. That sentence broke something open in me. Over the next few months, I started to unpack everything. The guilt, the numbness, the part of me that still tries to earn people's approval. I realized I've spent most of my life trying to be good, so no one would leave me again. It explained why I overwork, why I apologize too much, why I panic when people are disappointed in me. The more I understood, the less angry I became, not because they deserved forgiveness, but because I didn't deserve to carry their mistakes anymore. Last month, my mom called again. She said they're thinking about selling the house, moving to a smaller place. She said, "It'd be nice if you could help us pack, make some new memories." For a moment, I almost said yes out of habit, but then I took a breath and said, "I don't think I can do that, Mom. I'm not angry, but I need space." There was silence. Then she said, "Okay, we love you." And for once, I didn't say it back, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I didn't feel it. And I've spent enough years pretending I do. I hung up and sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. Then I realized I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry, I just felt free. Sometimes I still think about my dad on that porch, looking smaller than I remembered. I think about how regret looks different on everyone. His looked like exhaustion. My mom's looked like denial. I don't know if I'll see them again soon. Maybe someday I'll visit. Maybe I won't. But I've stopped waiting for a version of them that doesn't exist. If they pass away tomorrow, I'll be sad, of course, but not in the way people expect. I'll be sad for the family we could have been, not the one we were. And if there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that love isn't proven by blood or obligation. It's proven by safety, by showing up when someone needs you most. They didn't, and I survived anyway. That's what I hold on to now. Not bitterness. Not forgiveness, just peace, because sometimes healing isn't about going back home. It's about realizing you already built a new one. All by yourself. Final update. I didn't think I'd write here again. But life has a funny way of making you revisit things you think are over. It's been almost 2 years since I went back to see my parents after my dad's heart attack. A lot has changed, and not in the ways I expected. Last winter, my mom called again. This time it wasn't about moving or holidays. Her voice was quiet, thinner somehow. She said, "Your dad's not doing great. The doctors found more blockages. They're talking surgery." I felt that familiar pull in my stomach. The old reflex of guilt, duty, fear. I told her I'd think about visiting, but I didn't right away. I sat with it for a few days, walking around our apartment in silence while Rachel asked, "Are you okay?" I didn't even know what I felt. It wasn't love, but it wasn't hate anymore either. Just this ache, the kind that comes from missing something you never actually had. When I finally went, it was late December. The house looked smaller, the paint chipped, the porch sagging. My mom answered the door and gave me this soft, tired smile. "You made it." Inside, everything smelled like coffee and old wood. My dad was in his recliner, thinner again, wrapped in the same flannel blanket. He grinned when he saw me and said, "Hey kiddo, long time no see." And for a second, I saw not the man who kicked me out at 16, but just an aging father trying to make something right before it's too late. We didn't talk about the past that night. We just watched TV, the three of us sitting in the same room, pretending we were normal. When I left, my dad said, "Come back soon, okay?" I told him I would. I meant it, at least in that moment. But he didn't make it to spring. I got the call in March. My mom's voice broke halfway through the sentence. He didn't wake up, for a moment. I just sat there staring at the wall, my phone still in my hand. I didn't cry right away. It felt unreal, like my brain needed a minute to catch up. The funeral was small, family, a few neighbors, some guys from the garage he worked at. My mom asked me to speak, and I almost said no. What could I possibly say about a man who both loved me and failed me in the same lifetime? But standing there, looking at the closed casket, I realized I didn't need to talk about the bad parts. Everyone there already knew he wasn't perfect. So I told a story about when I was 8, how he used to take me fishing at a pond behind the junkyard, how he'd let me eat candy before breakfast just once a year, how even when I messed up the line or scared away the fish, he'd still pat my shoulder and say, "Good try, kiddo. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was honest, and maybe that's enough." After the service, my mom hugged me. Really hugged me. For the first time in maybe 20 years. She cried into my shoulder saying, "I don't know how to do this without him." I didn't either. For the next few months, I checked in on her. We talked more than we ever had. At first it was awkward. Two people who shared blood but not much else. But over time, the walls started to crumble a little. She told me about her arthritis getting worse, about how lonely the house felt. She said she'd been thinking about those days when I ran away. She didn't say sorry, not directly, but she said, "I wish I'd done things differently. You were just a kid." It was small, but it mattered. I told her I didn't hate her, and I meant it. But I also told her I couldn't be the child she used to want, the one who'd drop everything to make her feel okay. I told her I'd visit, but not constantly. I told her I loved her, but from a distance that felt safe. She nodded. "That's fair," she said. And for the first time, I believed she understood. It's strange, growing older and realizing your parents were just people who didn't know what the hell they were doing. They had fears, pride, bad examples from their own parents. My dad once told me his father used to lock him out of the house when he talked back. Maybe that's where he learned it, cycles repeating until someone finally says, "It stops with me." I guess that's me now. Rachel and I got married in June. Small ceremony by the lake, close friends. My mom sitting quietly in the second row. She didn't try to make it about her. She just smiled, cried, and clapped when we kissed. Later, she gave me a small box. Not fancy, just a wooden one. Inside was a folded note. It said, "You've built a beautiful life. I'm sorry for the years I made you think you didn't deserve that." I don't know how long I stared at that note. It wasn't the dramatic redemption moment people want in stories, but it felt real, human, maybe even enough now, months later. I still talk to her every couple of weeks. Sometimes she asks about work or the house. Sometimes she just wants to hear my voice. I don't mind anymore. I don't carry the same weight I used to. People always say time heals everything, but I don't think that's true. Time doesn't heal. Work does. Conversations. Boundaries, therapy, tears you didn't let yourself cry for years. That's what heals. I still have nights where I remember being 16, standing outside that front door, waiting for someone to tell me to come home. But when I think about it now, I also remember the version of me who survived. The kid who slept behind a gas station and still got up the next day. The one who kept going. That kid deserved love. And now, finally, he has it. Not from my parents, but from me, so yeah. I guess this is the last update. My dad's gone. My mom and I are something like okay. And I'm learning that closure doesn't come in one moment. It's slow, quiet, and sometimes sad, but it's real. I used to think love was something you earned. Now I know it's something you build. Even if you have to start from the ashes of what someone else broke. And that's enough for me. Stories number 7. My boyfriend got upset that I went to a picnic while he was at a wedding I wasn't invited to. When I tell this story out loud, it sounds petty, but living through it felt confusing, frustrating, and a little humiliating. So, a bit of context. I, 27F, have been dating my boyfriend, Ethan, 29, for about a year and a half. We met through mutual friends, hit it off immediately, and for the most part, things have been good. He's thoughtful, attentive, funny in that slightly awkward way, and genuinely one of those people who remembers tiny details about you. But lately, there have been moments, subtle ones, where I've felt like he expects my world to orbit his. A few weeks ago, Ethan had a close friend's wedding out of town. The friend, Mark, was someone he'd known since college. The thing is, I wasn't invited. At first, I thought maybe they just had a strict guest list or small venue. But Ethan casually mentioned that a few of his friends were bringing dates. Even people they'd been seeing for less time than we'd been together. That stung a bit. When I asked about it, he said, "It's not really my call, babe. Mark just wanted to keep it close friends." Fair enough. I let it go, even though it bothered me more than I admitted. The wedding was in a nearby city, about 3 hours away, and Ethan left Friday morning, saying he'd be back late Sunday. I wished him fun and tried not to sulk about being left out that Saturday. My friend Lena texted me, asking if I wanted to join a small picnic at the park near the lake. It was just a few friends. Her boyfriend Derek, our mutual friend Tasha, and a couple of others I didn't know well. I thought, why not? I'd been feeling kind of mopey and lonely, so I packed some snacks, wore a sundress, and joined them around noon. It was nice. Warm, breezy weather. Music playing from someone's portable speaker. Everyone sharing food and chatting. A few people were couples, a few were single. There was one guy, Matt, who I vaguely knew from another get-together, who seemed to talk to me a bit more than the others. But it wasn't flirty. At least, I didn't think so. I posted a few Instagram stories. One of the food, one of the lake view, and one of everyone raising their drinks in a toast. That's where it all started. Around 5 p.m. Ethan texted me. "Didn't know you had plans today?" It wasn't a mean message, but something about the tone felt off. I replied, "Yeah, Lena invited me to a picnic. It was super last minute. He didn't respond for 2 hours. Then, cool, looks like a lot of guys there though. I blinked at my phone. What? I said. It's a mixed group, why? He replied, nothing. Just seems weird you didn't mention it. Now, mind you, he was at a wedding, dressed in a tux, surrounded by friends, and based on his stories, dancing with bridesmaids and groomsmen. But he was somehow upset that I didn't tell him beforehand that I was eating sandwiches on a blanket at the park. When I said, I didn't think I needed to clear it with you, he shot back with, that's not what I'm saying. I just think communication goes both ways. The conversation fizzled after that, but I could feel the tension hanging over us. He came back Sunday night and acted kind of distant, not angry, exactly. More like pouty. I tried to bring it up gently while we were watching TV. Hey, are we okay? You seemed weird about me going to that picnic. He paused and said, it's just, I thought it was kind of disrespectful. You knew I was at a wedding, and it's like you were trying to prove something. I stared at him, genuinely confused. Prove what? He shrugged. I don't know. Like you wanted to show you could have fun without me or something? That floored me. So you can go to a whole wedding, hang out with people I don't know. But I can't go sit in the park with my friends. He said, it's different. You knew I couldn't invite you. But you didn't even tell me you were going. That's when I got a little annoyed. I didn't realize I had to report my social plans to you. It wasn't a secret. I just didn't think it was a big deal. He sighed and said, you don't get it. It's just about respect. That word, respect, got under my skin. I sat there thinking about how he didn't defend me when his friend didn't invite me to the wedding. And now he was making me feel like I'd done something wrong for hanging out with my own friends. For the next few days, things were tense. He texted less. When we did talk, it felt like we were both tiptoeing. Then, one night over dinner, I asked him directly, Ethan, do you not trust me? He immediately said, it's not about trust, it's about transparency. I said, transparency means sharing things willingly, not feeling like I need your permission. He looked uncomfortable and muttered, maybe we just have different boundaries. That's when it hit me. He genuinely believed that me going to a picnic without mentioning it was equivalent to being inconsiderate or shady. I told him, if that's how you see it, then maybe we do have different boundaries. We sat there in silence for a while. He didn't apologize, and I didn't either. We just kind of sat in this weird stalemate where neither of us wanted to be the first to back down. The following weekend, we went to brunch with friends, and everything seemed fine on the surface. Laughing, chatting, holding hands. But later, he brought it up again in the car. He said, you know, Mark's girlfriend thought it was really strange you didn't come to the wedding. I blinked. You told her I wasn't invited. He said, yeah, and she said if she were you, she'd be upset. I just don't want you to think I didn't want you there, I said quietly. But you didn't stand up for me either. He didn't answer. That was the moment I started questioning a lot more than just the picnic. Because underneath all of it, the transparency, the respect, the communication, was this subtle expectation that I should wait around for him, revolve my social life around his schedule, and feel guilty for not doing so. And I realized I didn't want that. I wanted a relationship where I could tell my boyfriend about my day, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. A relationship where I could go to a picnic with friends without it turning into a philosophical debate about loyalty. So yeah, maybe it sounds small. Maybe it sounds like a miscommunication blown out of proportion. But to me, it felt like a crack that revealed something deeper. Something I'm not sure I can ignore. Update. It's been a little over 2 months since the picnic incident, and if I'm being totally honest, it changed my relationship in ways I didn't expect, both quietly and completely. After that awkward car conversation, things between me and Ethan just never went back to normal. On the surface, we were fine. Still texting, still seeing each other, still doing the usual couple stuff. But underneath, something fundamental had shifted. Every interaction felt like it had a second layer, a kind of quiet evaluation. Should I tell him this? Will he take it the wrong way? That kind of walking on eggshells feeling? It eats at you. A week after that brunch, I went out for dinner with Lena and Tasha. It was nothing wild, just pasta, a bottle of wine, and us complaining about work. At one point, Lena asked casually, so, how are things with Ethan? You two still weird after the picnic? I laughed it off, saying, we're fine. But she gave me that look friends give you when they know you're lying. Tasha said, you don't seem fine, you seem tired. That hit harder than I expected. I hadn't realized until that moment that I was tired, not from work or life, but from the constant need to defend normal things I did. I told them about how Ethan kept bringing up communication and respect, but never actually apologized. Lena rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might stick. Girl, that's not about respect. That's control dressed up as concern. I wanted to defend him. I really did. But something in me couldn't. Later that night, when I got home, I saw that Ethan had texted me, "Hey, what are you up to?" I replied, "Just got home from dinner with the girls." He immediately responded, "Oh, you didn't tell me you were going out tonight." And there it was again. That quiet jab. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I wrote back. I didn't think I needed to. "We don't check in for permission." He didn't reply for an hour. Then he said, "You know that's not what I mean. It's just weird that you don't think about keeping me in the loop." I put my phone down. Something in me broke that night. Or maybe it finally woke up. The next day I told him we needed to talk. We met at his apartment. I was nervous, sweaty palms, tight chest, the whole thing. When I walked in, he looked like he already knew it wasn't going to be good news. He tried to start light. "Hey, want something to drink?" I shook my head and sat down. "Ethan, I don't think this is working." He froze. "What do you mean?" I told him everything. That I felt like he didn't trust me. That I felt small and monitored. That every time I tried to live my own life, he made me feel guilty. He said, "You're overreacting." "I'm just asking for communication," I said. "No, you're asking for control. You just call it communication so it sounds reasonable." He looked genuinely hurt, and for a moment I questioned myself. But then he said, "You're just being dramatic. Every couple keeps each other informed," I said quietly. "You don't keep me informed, Ethan. You go out, go to weddings, hang with people I've never met. And that's fine. I don't grill you about it, because I trust you." He rubbed his face and muttered, "So that's it?" I said, "I think so." He didn't fight it. He didn't yell. He just sat there, eyes red, nodding slowly. I guess I didn't realize how bad it got. When I left his place, I cried in my car for a good half hour, not because I regretted it, but because I knew it was the right decision. And right decisions are sometimes the hardest ones to live with. For the first few weeks after, it was weird. I'd catch myself wanting to text him when something funny happened. My phone felt quiet in a way that was both peaceful and lonely. Then, about 3 weeks after the breakup, he texted, "I just want to say I'm sorry. You were right about everything." It wasn't a long message, but it felt genuine. He said he'd been talking to his sister about it. Apparently, she told him she used to do the same thing in her own relationships, confusing control for care. He said he'd been reflecting and realized he had some insecurities he'd never really dealt with. I appreciated the apology. I didn't respond right away, but when I did, I told him, "Thank you. I'm glad you're working on yourself. I just need to keep moving forward too." We haven't spoken much since then, just the occasional polite message when something mutual comes up. Now, a few months later, I've been doing a lot better. I've reconnected with friends I'd unintentionally drifted from. I started hiking on weekends. I even joined this little book club Lena started, which is basically wine and gossip disguised as literature. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like my life is mine again. The biggest thing I've learned is that control doesn't always look like control. Sometimes it looks like concern, or communication, or respect. But if it leaves you feeling like you have to shrink yourself to keep the peace, that's not love. That's fear in disguise. I don't think Ethan is a bad person. I think he's just someone who's used to being the center of the story and didn't realize that relationships are supposed to have two narrators. Lately, when I think back to that picnic, I smile because that day, the sunlight, the laughter, the freedom of just being around people who didn't expect anything from me. That's what real peace feels like. And if I ever find myself in another relationship, I'll remember that. Because next time, I want someone who's happy knowing I can be happy, even when they're not right beside me. Final update. It's been a little over 2 years since I ended things with Ethan, and I can say now, without hesitation, that leaving that relationship was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Not because he was awful or toxic in the obvious dramatic ways, but because sometimes the most suffocating relationships are the quiet ones, the ones that chip away at your independence under the disguise of love and care. After the breakup, life didn't magically become perfect. It was actually a slow, uneven climb back to myself. The first few months were rough. I'd wake up and instinctively check my phone, expecting a good morning text that never came. I missed him, of course. You don't just erase a person who was part of your daily rhythm. But what I missed more than him was the version of me I thought I was when we were together. The one who believed that being a good girlfriend meant being predictable, available, and non-threatening. The truth hit me one night when I went to dinner with Lena and Tasha again. We were sitting outside a little Mexican place, margaritas in hand, when Lena said, "You seem lighter." I laughed and said, "Probably because I can go to a picnic without getting interrogated." We all burst out laughing. But then I realized how true it was. I was lighter. My world wasn't revolving around someone else's comfort anymore. About 6 months later, Ethan reached out again. Not in a dramatic, "let's get back together" way. He sent a long, sincere message. He said he'd started therapy, that he'd realized he'd been projecting his insecurities onto me, and that losing me was a wake-up call. He said he didn't expect me to respond, but wanted to thank me for calling him out on things no one else had. I read the message twice, felt a wave of closure, and replied simply, "I'm really glad you're growing. I wish you the best." That was the last time we spoke, and honestly, I felt nothing but peace. Since then, life has moved forward, beautifully and quietly. I moved apartments last year, into a cozy place with big windows and a balcony that overlooks a little park. I started doing things I'd always wanted to try but never had time for when I was dating Ethan, like taking pottery classes, volunteering at the animal shelter, and joining a hiking group. Funny enough, that hiking group is where I met Caleb. He was new in town, an environmental engineer who always had dirt on his boots and an easy smile. The first time we talked, it was because I tripped over a rock on the trail, and he caught me before I face-planted into the mud. I made some dumb joke like, "Well, that's one way to make an impression," and he laughed. A real, unfiltered laugh. We started hiking together more often, just as friends at first, but the more time I spent with him, the more I noticed the quiet differences. How he never made me feel like I had to explain my choices. How he listened without jumping to conclusions. How he respected my independence without making it feel like distance. I remember one Sunday morning, we were supposed to meet for coffee, and I texted him saying I was too tired and wanted a solo day instead. He replied, "Good for you. Enjoy the quiet. No guilt trip. No passive-aggressive wish you'd told me sooner, just acceptance." And it hit me how new that felt. To be trusted without question. We've been together a year now. It's not perfect. No relationship is. But it's healthy, peaceful, real. A few months ago, we went to a friend's wedding together. Yes, together. And yes, I was invited. During the reception, the DJ started playing a song that brought back memories of Ethan's friend's wedding. The one I wasn't invited to. For a moment, I froze. I hadn't thought about that day in so long, but suddenly, it was there. The feeling of being left out, unseen, made small. Caleb noticed immediately and leaned in, asking, "You okay?" I smiled and said, "Yeah, I just remembered something." He squeezed my hand and said, "You don't ever have to shrink for me." I almost cried right there on the dance floor. Later that night when we got home, I sat on my balcony and thought about how different things are now. How I don't feel like I have to measure my happiness against someone else's comfort level. How I can go out with friends, post a picture, or do absolutely nothing, and it's all okay. Sometimes I think about Ethan, not in a bitter way, but with quiet gratitude, because if I hadn't gone through that relationship, I might never have learned what boundaries actually mean. I might have kept mistaking control for care, silence for safety, and guilt for love. And it's wild that all of it started because of a simple picnic. A few weeks ago, Lena texted me, "We're doing another picnic this Saturday. You in?" I laughed and replied, "Wouldn't miss it." So there I was, sitting on that same stretch of grass by the lake, sunlight dancing on the water, friends laughing around me. Caleb showed up halfway through, bringing my favorite iced tea and plopping down beside me. Lena grinned and said, "Well, look at that. Full circle moment." She was right, it really was. Because that day, the first picnic, was when I realized something was wrong. And this one, years later, was proof that I finally got it right. So if anyone ever asks me what I learned from all of it, I'd say this: if someone loves you, they'll never make your freedom feel like a betrayal. They'll celebrate the parts of you that exist beyond them. Because love isn't about control, it's about trust. And I'll never, ever forget that again. Stories number 8. The syrup incident that split my family, okay? This sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but this small thing somehow turned into one of the biggest arguments my family's had in years. I'm 29, and last weekend I went to my brother's house for brunch. He and his wife have a daughter who just turned 7. I adore that kid. She's funny, curious, and brutally honest. Like most kids her age, my brother Evan and his wife, Laura, are pretty health conscious. They're not extreme about it, but they limit sugar, processed foods, all that stuff. I respect it. I don't have kids, so I keep my mouth shut and follow their lead when I'm over there. Usually I bring a bottle of wine or some fruit when I visit. But this time, Laura invited me for a pancake morning. She said they'd make a big breakfast and that I could bring whatever toppings I wanted. So I brought real maple syrup, the good stuff, and a tub of whipped butter. Simple enough, right? We're all sitting around the table, laughing, eating. I make my pancakes, pour a decent amount of syrup, and dig in. Then I feel eyes on me. I look up and see my niece Sophie, watching me pour a little more syrup. Her eyes go wide like I just set the house on fire. She says, "Aunt Megan, that's a lot of syrup." I laughed and said, "I know, kiddo, I like mine sweet," she giggled. And I thought it was no big deal. But Laura immediately said, "We don't use that much sugar here." Her tone was calm but clipped, the kind of voice parents use when they're trying not to snap in front of their kid. I just smiled awkwardly and said, "Right, sorry." I thought that would be the end of it, but a few minutes later I noticed Sophie staring at her plate, then at mine, then at her parents'. She asked if she could have more syrup too. Laura told her. "No, honey, you already have enough," then Sophie said. "But Aunt Megan has more," and that's when things took a weird turn. Laura sighed and said, "Well, Aunt Megan doesn't always make healthy choices." That stung. It wasn't mean exactly, but the way she said it, so dismissive, in front of everyone, made me feel like a child being scolded. Evan gave her a look, and I tried to laugh it off, saying, "Hey, no judgment, I don't eat like this every day." Laura didn't respond. We kept eating, but the energy was tense. Sophie kept glancing at me, like she was trying to figure out who was right. When breakfast ended, I helped clean up, thanked them, and left earlier than planned. A few hours later, Evan called. He apologized for how things went down. He said Laura was upset because Sophie's been copying adult behavior lately, especially mine, apparently, and they've been trying to set better boundaries around food. I said I understood, but I also told him I didn't appreciate being made into a bad example for using a normal amount of syrup. Evan hesitated and said, "Look, I get it, but you know how Laura is about sugar, just maybe be mindful next time," I said. Sure, but I hung up feeling weirdly angry. I wasn't out there chugging soda in front of a toddler. It was syrup on pancakes. That night, I vented to my best friend, Jason. He laughed and said, "You didn't do anything wrong. That's parenting overkill." My mom, on the other hand, told me I should have just gone along quietly because parents know best. Now it's been a week. Laura hasn't texted me. Evan's kept things surface level, just random updates about work or Sophie. I'm honestly not sure if I'm welcome there right now. Here's the thing. I get that parents want to teach healthy habits. I really do. But I also think part of being around family is showing that people can make different choices without it being a bad influence. It's not like Sophie saw me snort sugar off the table. I poured syrup on pancakes, but apparently that was enough to send her home asking for Aunt Megan pancakes all week, which, according to my mom, has caused a whole ordeal. Now my family thinks I should apologize for undermining her parents. I feel like that's dramatic. If I have to censor how I eat around my own niece, I'm not sure I even want to go over there anymore. It's such a small thing. But it's been blown into something so much bigger. Maybe it's not about syrup at all. Maybe it's about control. Or the fact that Laura and I have never really clicked. She's always thought I'm too laid back. I think she's too rigid. We keep it civil. But stuff like this always exposes the cracks. Evan's caught in the middle, trying to keep everyone calm. He told me he wishes I'd just roll with it when Laura gets like that. But I'm tired of pretending I'm the problem. I know kids mimic adults, but isn't that part of the deal? They see people live differently. They learn balance. I don't think seeing me enjoy syrup ruins her health education. It's just syrup, I don't know. Maybe I'm too defensive. Maybe I'm missing something about parenting because I don't have kids. But it really doesn't sit right that I'm being treated like a bad influence over breakfast food. Still, part of me wonders if I should just apologize to smooth things over. I love my niece more than anything, and I hate the thought of Laura using me as an example of what not to do. I just don't know if saying sorry will make things better, or just reinforce that I was wrong when I don't believe I was. It's wild how something so small can turn into a silent Cold War in a family, all over a few extra tablespoons of maple syrup. Update: I didn't plan on writing an update, But this whole syrup thing somehow spiraled further than I ever expected. And I need to get it off my chest, so after I posted, I decided not to reach out first. I figured some space would help everyone cool off. But a few days later, my mom called and said Laura had mentioned the incident again during a family group chat. According to Mom, Laura said something like, "It's not about syrup, it's about respecting parenting boundaries." That got under my skin. I hadn't said a word to anyone except my mom and best friend. And here Laura was still stewing about it. I texted Evan later that night, just a simple, "Hey, can we talk? I don't want things to stay weird." He called a few hours later after Sophie went to bed. The call started fine, but quickly turned into one of those polite arguments where both people are trying not to sound angry but totally are. I told him I felt embarrassed that Laura called me out in front of everyone, especially in front of Sophie. He sighed and said, "I get that, but you've got to understand how much Sophie copies you. You're like her hero. If you do something, she wants to do it too," I said. "That's sweet, but it doesn't mean I can't eat syrup," he said. "It's not just syrup, Meg, it's consistency. We're trying to teach her about limits, and when someone she loves blows past them, it sets us back." That stung more than I expected. I told him I didn't blow past anything, I was just living normally. Then he said, "You don't get it because you're not a parent." And that right there, those words, felt like a punch. It wasn't even the first time someone said that to me, but it hit differently coming from him. I told him he didn't have to be a parent to understand respect goes both ways. He got quiet for a long time and finally said, "I'll talk to Laura." The next day, Laura texted me. It was short. "Hey Megan, sorry if I embarrassed you. I just want Sophie to make healthy choices and not think sugar is okay all the time. Hope you understand." I stared at it for a while. It wasn't exactly an apology. It was more like a justification wrapped in polite wording. But I replied anyway, "I get it. I'll be more mindful when I'm over." "No hard feelings." She sent back a thumbs up emoji. That was it. A week later, Mom insisted we all come to Sunday dinner. I was hesitant, but I went because she hates family tension. When I walked in, Laura gave me this polite smile. Like everything was fine. Evan hugged me. Sophie ran up and showed me her drawing, and for a second, it felt normal again. Then came dessert. Mom made homemade waffles and had syrup on the table. I swear I didn't even reach for it. Sophie did. She grabbed the bottle and said, "I'll pour it like Aunt Megan does." I froze. Everyone did. Laura's face went pale, and I could see her jaw tighten. I tried to laugh and said, "Oh." Aunt Megan's famous syrup move, trying to lighten the mood. Laura said gently, "Just a little, honey." But Sophie kept pouring. It wasn't that much, maybe a normal adult amount, but Laura snapped, "That's enough," and yanked the bottle away. Sophie looked startled and started crying. The room went silent except for Sophie's sniffles. I felt awful. I reached over, rubbed her back, and said, "Hey, it's okay. Aunt Megan went overboard last time. I'll teach you my secret. Use just enough to make it sweet." She smiled a little, and the tension eased, but Laura was staring at me like I'd just staged a rebellion. After dinner, Laura cornered me in the kitchen while I was helping clean up. She kept her voice low and said, "I appreciate you trying to comfort her, but please don't undermine me again," I said. "I wasn't undermining you, I was calming her down," she said. "You always have an answer for everything, don't you?" That one took me aback. I wanted to argue, but I just said, "I'm trying, Laura." Really, she didn't respond. When I left that night, I hugged Sophie and told her I'd see her soon. She whispered, "Can we make pancakes again?" I laughed and said, "Maybe next time." But on the drive home, I realized I didn't actually want to go back anytime soon. I love my brother and niece, but it's exhausting walking on eggshells around Laura. A few days later, Evan texted me, "Laura feels like you keep making light of things she's serious about. She's not mad, just hurt." That's when I realized there's no winning here. If I joke, I'm disrespectful. If I defend myself, I'm combative. If I stay quiet, I'm distant. Jason joked that I should start smuggling sugar packets into family events, just to mess with her. I laughed. But honestly, I'm just tired. I'm starting to think this isn't really about syrup or sugar or parenting. I think Laura just doesn't like me very much, and hasn't for a while. I've always been the fun aunt who travels, drinks wine, and doesn't have kids. She's the responsible mom who meal preps and follows routines. I think my existence kind of rubs against her worldview. I don't mean that in a bitter way. It's just how it feels. For now, I've decided to step back a bit. I told Evan I love them but need some space. He said he understood, but I could tell he was disappointed. The part that hurts the most is that Sophie asked for me twice this week, and Laura apparently told her I was busy. I get it, she's protecting her kid. But it still breaks my heart. I don't know where this leaves us. I don't want a full-on family feud over pancakes. But I also don't want to apologize again for something so harmless just to keep the peace. I think the next time I see them, I'll bring flowers instead of syrup. That seems safer. Final update. It's been half a year since the infamous syrup incident. And honestly, it feels both absurd and sad that something so trivial caused such a rift in my family. But here's where things stand now, and where I've landed emotionally after all of it. After my last post, I pulled back from visiting Evan and Laura's house. It wasn't a dramatic decision. I just quietly stopped accepting every invitation. At first, no one really noticed. We still texted here and there, mostly about mom or work or Sophie's latest obsession. Dinosaurs, if you're curious. But the constant edge was gone. And for the first time in a while, I felt peaceful then, about 2 months ago. Mom hosted another family brunch. I almost didn't go, but she guilt-tripped me with the classic, "It's just breakfast, not a peace summit" line. So I showed up, late on purpose. When I walked in, everything looked picture perfect. The table was covered in fruit, eggs, turkey bacon, all the usual, and right in the center sat a bottle of syrup, not the sugar-free kind either, the real, sticky, amber kind. I noticed it instantly, but I didn't say a word. Laura caught my glance and said, "Sophie picked it out." Sophie was grinning ear to ear. Mom said we could use the real syrup today, but only if we pour a little. I couldn't help but laugh. "Sounds like a fair rule," Laura smiled. An actual, genuine smile, and said, "Balance, right?" It was small, but it felt huge. That moment melted a lot of the awkwardness that had been building for months. We all sat down, and for the first time since that ridiculous argument, breakfast felt normal again. Sophie poured her syrup carefully. Evan made a corny joke. Mom rolled her eyes. Laura even asked about the trip I took to Oregon. It wasn't warm exactly, but it wasn't cold either. After we ate, Laura pulled me aside while we were cleaning up. She said, "I've been thinking about that morning a lot. I might have overreacted. I almost dropped the dish I was drying." She went on, "It wasn't really about syrup. Sophie had been sneaking snacks lately, and I was already stressed. You just happened to be there when I snapped," I told her. "It's okay. I didn't handle it great either." We talked for a while. For once, it didn't feel like walking through a minefield. She admitted that she'd been jealous of how close Sophie and I are. She said, "You get to be the fun one. I'm the rule maker." It's hard not to resent that sometimes. That honesty caught me off guard, but it made sense. I told her I didn't want to make her feel undermined. I just wanted to be part of Sophie's life without feeling like I had to pass a parenting test every time. She nodded and said, "Fair, let's start over." And we did. Since then, things have been easier. I still go over, though not every weekend. Sophie and I have pancake mornings sometimes, but we keep them balanced. One drizzle of syrup, a lot of laughter, and no judgment. Evan told me later that he was relieved. Apparently, the tension between me and Laura had been bothering him more than he let on. He said, "You two are the most important women in my life, and watching you fight over breakfast was honestly depressing." Fair enough. A funny thing happened last month. Sophie had to bring a family story to school for show and tell. Laura sent me a photo of her holding a big poster titled "The Syrup Fight." She drew me, her mom, her dad, and a giant bottle of syrup with smiley faces. Underneath she wrote, "We learned it's okay if people like different things." I laughed until I cried. It's wild how kids see things so simply while adults twist them into mountains. Sophie wasn't traumatized or confused. She just saw two grown-ups disagree and then make up. To her, that was the lesson. That kind of hit me because if I'm honest, this whole syrup thing wasn't really about sugar or parenting. It was about boundaries, respect, and maybe a little insecurity, on both sides. Laura was trying to control a world that constantly feels out of control when you're raising a kid. I was trying to prove I wasn't the flaky, irresponsible aunt she sometimes saw me as. We were both protecting something. Now, when I go over, things feel settled. Laura even lets me bring dessert again. At Sophie's birthday party last weekend, we made sundaes together. She handed me the syrup bottle and said, "You pour yours how you want. I'll pour mine how I want," I said. "Deal." Laura watched from across the room, smiling, and I realized in that small, sweet moment that the whole thing, every awkward text, every tense brunch, was just growing pains for our family. I used to think I needed to prove I was right, Now I just want peace, and I have it, so yeah. It turns out a bottle of maple syrup can nearly destroy a family. And also, somehow fix one. Stories number 9. My daughter doesn't want to go to a wedding because of the dress code. And I'm torn about whether to make her. So, here's the situation. I'm Caroline, 42, married to Dylan, 44, and we've got 2 kids. Abby, who's 15, and Josh, who's 12. My cousin Megan is getting married next month, and I'm honestly happy for her. She's the kind of person who has been dreaming about her wedding since she was probably old enough to hold a Barbie in a white dress. She's sweet, a little controlling in that Pinterest bride way, but she means well. She sent out these gorgeous invitations a few months ago, and right at the bottom, in italic script, it said, "Formal attire required. No exceptions." I didn't think much of it at first. Most weddings have a dress code, right? But then we got the actual follow-up email from her wedding planner with clarifications. Apparently, she's dead serious about it. For women and girls, long dresses only. No short hems, no 2-piece sets, no pantsuits. For men and boys, suits with ties, dress shoes only. She even added a note that fashion sneakers will not be permitted, which made me laugh because it's such a Megan thing to say. But here's the issue. Abby hates dresses, and when I say hates, I mean she's been refusing to wear one since she was about 11. She's not doing it for attention or rebellion. She just doesn't feel comfortable in them. She's a sporty kid, lives in hoodies and cargo pants, always has her hair up in a messy bun. She's confident in who she is, which I love, but anything feminine in the traditional sense makes her shut down. When I told her about the wedding and the dress code, she groaned immediately. "Please tell me I can wear pants," she said. I told her I didn't think so, but we could ask, so I messaged Megan. Trying to keep it polite and non-confrontational, I said something like, "Hey, just checking. Would it be okay if Abby wore a nice tailored pantsuit instead of a dress? She's never been comfortable in dresses, but she wants to look appropriate," Megan replied within an hour. And the tone of her message still makes my stomach twist when I reread it. She wrote, "Hi Caroline, I totally understand. But we've put a lot of thought into our aesthetic and want everyone to look cohesive. It's really important to me that the photos reflect the vibe we're going for. I know Abby will look beautiful in a dress. Maybe she can find one she loves. That little heart emoji at the end?" I could practically hear the passive-aggressive tone through the screen. When I told Abby, she looked at me like I'd betrayed her. "So I have to wear a dress?" she said, her voice cracking a bit. I tried to reassure her, told her we'd find something simple and comfortable. Maybe flowy instead of fitted. But she just shook her head. "Mom, I don't want to go. Dylan thinks she's being dramatic." He said, "It's one afternoon, Caroline. She can suck it up for family." But I don't agree. I remember being a teenager. Every uncomfortable thing felt 1,000 times worse, especially when it involved your body and how people saw you. Abby's been so sure of herself these past few years, and I don't want to make her feel like she has to pretend to be someone else just to fit a picture. Still, I also know how Megan is. She's family, and she's sensitive. She's the type to take everything personally. If Abby doesn't show up, she'll see it as a snub, no matter what explanation we give. The rest of the family has been weighing in, of course. Because no family drama can stay private, my sister Lauren, who always sides with Megan because they're close, said, "You can't let a kid call the shots for an adult event. What kind of message does that send?" My mom chimed in too, saying, "It's not about Abby's comfort, it's about respect. You can be uncomfortable for a few hours. I get where they're coming from. I really do. But what nobody seems to understand is that this isn't just about a dress. It's about Abby feeling like she's being forced to perform femininity for someone else's approval. She's told me before that when she wears a dress, she feels like she's in someone else's skin." That broke my heart when she said it. Last weekend I tried one more time to see if maybe we could find a compromise. We went shopping, and I told her she could pick any long dress she wanted. No matter the color or price, we walked through racks of fabric and sparkles, and I watched her shoulders tense up more with every option. At one point, she just sat down on the little bench in the fitting area, tears in her eyes. "I can't do this, Mom. I just can't," so we left without buying anything. I told Dylan that night that maybe Abby should just skip the wedding. I said Josh and I could go, and he could stay home with her. But Dylan said no. He said if we let her stay home, we're teaching her to run from things instead of learning to deal with them. I told him there's a difference between avoiding responsibility and protecting your boundaries. He said I'm just being soft. We went to bed not speaking that night, which hasn't happened in years. Now it's 2 weeks until the wedding. And the group chat with my cousins is full of talk about hairstyles and jewelry. Megan posted a countdown story on Instagram yesterday with the caption, "One family, one vision." Abby saw it and said, "Guess we're not part of that vision." I didn't know what to say. Here's the truth. I don't want to force her to go. I want to teach her that it's okay to stand up for herself, even when it's uncomfortable. But I also don't want to be the parent who causes family drama right before someone's wedding. I keep thinking about how, when she was little, Abby used to line up her sneakers perfectly before bed. She always said she liked being ready to run. I didn't understand it then. Now I do. She's not running away. She's protecting herself the only way she knows how. If that makes me the soft parent, fine. I'd rather raise a daughter who knows her limits than one who learns to swallow them just to keep everyone else happy. So I haven't RSVP'd for her yet. The wedding's on a Saturday. And I still haven't told Megan she might not come. Part of me keeps hoping she'll text and say, "You know what? Pantsuits are fine," but I know she won't. Abby told me tonight, "If you really need me to go, I will. But I'll hate every second of it." And that's what's breaking me. The idea that I'd make my kid sit through a celebration just to make other people comfortable. Maybe that's what weddings are about for some families. Appearances, pictures, matching colors. But that's not what I want mine to be about. So now I'm sitting here at midnight, laptop open, scrolling through flights and hotels for the wedding weekend, wondering if I should just tell Megan the truth. Abby won't be coming, not out of spite, not out of disrespect, just because sometimes love means letting someone say no, even to a dress. Update, my daughter didn't go to the wedding, and everything fell apart, then somehow fell back together. I wasn't planning to write an update. But a lot has happened since my first post, and I feel like I owe it to everyone who told me to trust my gut. I also just need to process this somewhere that isn't inside my own head. So, the wedding happened 3 weeks ago. The days leading up to it were tense, like Cold War levels of tension in my house. Dylan and I weren't fighting outright. But there was this low hum of disagreement between us every time Abby's name came up. He was firm that she should go. I was firm that she shouldn't have to. 2 days before we were supposed to drive down, I finally told Megan. I sent her a message that said, "Hey, I wanted to let you know that Abby won't be attending the wedding. She doesn't feel comfortable with the dress code, and I'd rather not force her into something that makes her unhappy. I hope you understand." No emojis, no fluff, just honest. It took her a day to respond. When she finally did, she wrote, "I'm disappointed, Caroline. I wish you'd made more of an effort to support our vision as a family." This was supposed to be a special day for everyone. I read that message 3 times. Our vision as a family. I don't know why, but those words stung more than the rest. I started to reply, then deleted what I wrote. There wasn't any point in defending myself to someone who equates family unity with aesthetic cohesion. When I told Dylan about her response, he sighed and said, "You see? She's hurt." "This is exactly what I was worried about," I said. "You're worried about her feelings, but what about Abby's?" He didn't answer. That Friday night, the house was quiet. Abby helped Josh pack his little suit and tie. "You're gonna look sharp, dude," she said, trying to sound upbeat. Then she hugged me in the kitchen and said, "I'm sorry if I made this harder for you." I told her she didn't make anything hard. That sometimes standing your ground makes waves. But that doesn't mean you're wrong. Saturday morning, Dylan and Josh left early to drive down to the venue. Abby and I stayed behind. We made pancakes, watched Gilmore Girls, and walked our dog Scout. Around the neighborhood, it felt normal and peaceful. Around noon, she got quiet and said, "Do you think they're mad at me?" I told her honestly, "Probably. But people get mad when their expectations aren't met. That's not your fault." Around 3 p.m., my phone started buzzing with photos in the family group chat. Bridesmaids in pale pink, the groomsmen lined up by the lake, Megan beaming in her designer gown. I felt that familiar pit in my stomach, like I was being left out of something important. Then my sister Lauren texted me privately. "Megan's upset. She noticed Abby isn't here and asked where she was." I told her she wasn't feeling well. "I hope that's okay." I thanked her, but I hated that we were lying just to avoid judgment. Abby overheard and said, "So I'm the sick cousin now?" I laughed a little, but she didn't. She said, "Maybe it's better that way." That night, after Dylan and Josh got home, he was quieter than usual. I asked how the wedding went. He said, "It was nice, but Megan was cold to me. Your mom gave me a look when she realized Abby wasn't there." Then he said something that surprised me. But I also get it now. Apparently during the reception, the photographer was bossing everyone around. telling them to move this way, tilt that way, smile bigger. Dylan said it felt more like a movie shoot than a wedding. He said, "At one point I looked around and thought, Abby would have hated this." That's when I knew he finally understood. 2 days later, Megan called me. I hesitated before answering, half expecting a confrontation, but her tone was different, tired, subdued. She said, "I'm sorry for how I reacted before the wedding. It was a stressful time, and I wanted everything perfect," I told her. "I get it, but Abby's not a prop, she's a person, and she didn't want to ruin your photos. She just wanted to be herself." There was a long pause. Then she said, "I know, I think I forgot that part. It wasn't an apology for everything, but it was enough." Then something unexpected happened. A few days later, Megan sent Abby a handwritten note in the mail. It said, "Hey Abby, I heard you didn't come because of the dress thing. I'm sorry if I made you feel excluded. You're awesome just the way you are. Maybe next time, wear whatever makes you happy. Love, Megan." Abby read it twice, then pinned it on her bulletin board. She said, "That was actually really nice of her." I think Megan's message came from guilt more than enlightenment, but still, it meant something. It reminded Abby that standing her ground didn't mean burning bridges. The real twist, though, came from my mom. She called a week later, out of the blue, and said, "I've been thinking about how hard it must have been for Abby to say no. I didn't understand before." She told me she saw the photos from the wedding and noticed how posed everything looked. She said, "Maybe she would have looked out of place in those pictures, but in the best way." That made me cry. My mom has never been one to admit when she's wrong. Since then, things have been calmer. Abby's back to being her funny, confident self. Dylan and I are doing better, too. He told me he's proud of how I handled it. Even if it took him a while to see why it mattered, last weekend, Abby actually wore a skirt, not for anyone else. Just because she wanted to. We were going to a local concert, and she said, "It's comfy, and it has pockets." I didn't make a big deal out of it, but it hit me later that maybe standing up for herself didn't make her hard or defiant. It made her free. I realized something important through all of this. When you're raising kids, especially teenagers, your job isn't to make them fit into the world. It's to give them the confidence to stand apart from it when they need to. Maybe I'll always be the soft parent, the one who negotiates instead of demands, who listens instead of lectures. But I'm okay with that now, because when Abby looks at me, I can tell she feels seen, and honestly, that's worth way more than a perfect family photo. Final update, a year later. I finally understand what that wedding taught all of us. It's been a year since my cousin Megan's wedding, the one that Abby skipped because of the dress code. And I never thought something so small could ripple through my family the way it did. But honestly, it changed more than I ever expected. I wasn't planning to update again. Life moved on, the tension faded, the group chats went quiet, and I thought we were all just going to politely avoid the subject forever. But then something happened last weekend that brought it all full circle, and it made me realize how much we've all grown. Or at least, how much I have. So, quick catch-up. Megan and her husband, Tyler, ended up moving to Chicago a few months after the wedding. Their pictures went viral locally because she had this magazine-perfect setup by the lake. The kind where everyone's smiling like their life is flawless. Abby and I saw them online once. She just said, "They all look like they can't breathe." I laughed. But it was that kind of laugh that comes with a little sting of truth. Our family didn't talk much for a while. There were no huge blow-ups, just quiet distance. Holidays were smaller. Lauren hosted Thanksgiving instead of my mom, and we stayed home that year. It wasn't out of protest, more out of exhaustion. I just didn't have it in me to smile through the passive-aggressive comments about family unity. But the funny thing about time is that it softens the edges. Around spring, my mom called to tell me Megan was pregnant. I congratulated her genuinely. I really was happy for her. It's hard not to feel happy when new life is involved. No matter the baggage. Abby overheard the call and said, "Maybe she'll have a kid who hates dresses too." We both laughed, but I think we both knew that was her way of saying she was okay now. Abby's 16 now, driving, working part-time at a coffee shop, still living in her hoodies and sneakers. But she's so much more confident. She's the kid who helps new students find their classes, who tells her friends it's okay to say no to things. She still doesn't wear dresses, and that's fine. She's happy. Anyway, last weekend, Megan came back to town for my mom's birthday. I wasn't sure how it would go. We hadn't been in the same room since before the wedding. I brought Abby and Josh, and when we walked in, Megan was already there, holding her baby, a little girl named Ella. It's weird how becoming a parent changes a person. Megan looked softer, less composed, more real. Her perfect hair was in a messy bun, and there was a spit-up stain on her shoulder. When she saw Abby, she smiled, not the polite kind, but a real one, and said, "Wow, you grew up?" Abby smiled back and said, "You too." Everyone laughed, and the tension just dissolved. During dinner, Megan pulled me aside into the kitchen. She looked nervous. She said, "I need to tell you something." I braced myself. I thought maybe she was going to bring up the wedding again, maybe finally unload everything she'd been holding in. Instead, she said, "I've been thinking a lot about that day, about how I handled it, and now that I have Ella, I get it. I want her to be herself, even if it doesn't fit into anyone's picture." I can't explain what that moment did to me. I just nodded, because if I said anything, I would have started crying. Megan put her hand on my arm and said, "I was so obsessed with having everything perfect. I didn't realize I was making people miserable. I think I was scared. Like if everything looked perfect, then maybe it would be perfect. But it doesn't work that way," I told her. "You don't owe me an apology, Megan, but that means a lot," she said. "Well, it's not really for you, it's for Abby. You were right to protect her." After that, we went back out to the table and it actually felt like family again. Abby even held Ella for a while, and Megan snapped a picture. The kind of picture that wasn't posed or perfect, but still beautiful. Later that night, when we got home, Abby was quiet. Then she said, "I don't hate Megan anymore. I think she's just learning, like the rest of us." And that hit me so hard, because she said it without resentment, just understanding. That's when it finally clicked for me. All of this, the argument, the family drama, the tension, wasn't really about a dress. It was about the illusion that love and respect have to look a certain way, that families have to match to matter. That's what I grew up believing, that harmony meant sameness. But Abby taught me the opposite. I used to think I was the soft parent, the one who couldn't enforce the hard rules. But I see now that there's a kind of strength in softness. It's the strength to sit beside your kid when everyone else is telling you to push them. The strength to let people be mad at you because you chose your child's peace over their comfort. And here's the kicker. Since then, my family dynamic has actually improved. My mom doesn't comment on Abby's clothes anymore. Lauren apologized for being harsh about the wedding. Even Dylan told me the other night, "You were right, she's better for it." We went to another wedding last month, one of Dylan's coworkers, and the dress code was cocktail formal. Abby wore black slacks, a button-down, and a blazer with Converse. She looked amazing. On the way home, she said, "That was actually fun." And that's when I realized how much we all grew up this year. Not just Abby, but me too. If you'd told me a year ago that a simple dress code would lead to all this introspection and healing, I would have laughed. But maybe that's the thing about family, Dai. Sometimes it takes breaking the rules to learn which ones actually matter. Now, when I look back at those perfect wedding photos, I don't feel left out anymore. I just feel grateful that I didn't trade my daughter's comfort for an illusion. Because perfection fades, but self-respect, that sticks. And if Abby ever looks back on that time and remembers anything, I hope it's not the drama, or the tears, or the family tension. I hope she remembers that her mom stood beside her. Not because it was easy, but because she was worth standing up for. That's the kind of legacy I want to leave behind. Stories number 10. My dad showed up to my mom's funeral with his new wife, and I told them to leave. When people say funerals bring out the truth in families, I used to think that was just something people said to sound wise. Now I know it's painfully real. I 32F lost my mom, Linda, 6 weeks ago. Even typing that sentence feels unreal. She'd been battling cancer for a little over a year, and though the doctors warned us that the treatments were only buying time, I still didn't expect to lose her as fast as we did. Mom was one of those women who made everything feel manageable, even bad news, even fear. She was strong, sharp-witted, sarcastic in the best way, and absolutely the heart of our family. My parents divorced when I was 15. It wasn't a messy divorce, but it wasn't exactly friendly either. My dad, Paul, moved out after years of quiet resentment and late-night arguments that I tried to pretend I couldn't hear. Within a year of the divorce, he started seeing Debbie, a woman he worked with. That was 20 years ago, but to me, it still felt like a betrayal. Mom never said anything bad about him. She just stopped talking about him at all. When I got older, I learned she'd found out about the affair only after the fact. She didn't yell, didn't demand anything. just quietly packed up his stuff and told him she hoped he'd find what he was looking for. He did. Apparently, that was Debbie. They married 5 years later. I was civil to her at first, because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. But she always had this air of superiority. This "I know I replaced your mom, deal with it" attitude. She'd make these little comments about how Paul seems so much happier now, or it's nice having a partner who supports his career instead of competing with it. Mom heard about those comments from mutual friends, and though she brushed it off, I knew it hurt her. She just never gave Debbie the satisfaction of reacting. When Mom's health started to decline, Dad did check in. Occasionally, he'd call to ask how she was doing, send flowers on her birthday, things like that. I think part of him felt guilty, but not enough to show up when it mattered. When she passed, I was the one who arranged everything. The service, the burial, the reception. My younger brother Eli helped where he could, but most of the emotional and logistical work fell on me. I didn't mind. It was the last thing I could do for her. A week before the funeral, Dad called me. His voice was gentle at first. "Honey, I'm so sorry. Your mom was a wonderful woman." I thanked him, holding back tears. Then he said, "Debbie and I would like to come to the funeral, to pay our respects." I froze. "You and Debbie?" "Yes," he said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Dad," I said carefully, "I want you there, but I don't think it's appropriate for Debbie to come." There was a long silence. Then he said, "That's not fair. She knew your mother too." I almost laughed. "Yeah, she knew her as the woman whose husband she slept with." "Don't be cruel," he said sharply. "That was decades ago. Mom never got over that," I told him. "You can come alone, but if you bring her, I'll ask her to leave." He said something about holding grudges and being more mature, and I hung up before I said something I'd regret. I thought that was the end of it. I thought he'd respect that boundary. The day of the funeral was one of those heavy gray days that looked like they were made for grief. The church was full. Co-workers, neighbors, old friends. The service was beautiful. Eli spoke first. Then I read something Mom had written years ago about gratitude and forgiveness. And then, right as we were getting ready to leave for the cemetery, I saw them, Dad, in a dark gray suit, walking through the aisle with her, Debbie, in a long black dress, oversized sunglasses, and a somber expression that looked more like performance than pain. She even carried a bouquet of white lilies. People turned and whispered. My heart dropped. I walked straight up to them before they could take their seats. "Dad," I said quietly, "I told you not to bring her." He looked embarrassed, glancing at the people watching. "Don't make a scene," he whispered. "She's here to support me," I said. "This isn't about you," Debbie chimed in softly. "I just wanted to pay my respects. I cared about Linda, too." Something in me snapped. "No, you didn't. You cared about her husband." There was a hush. My dad hissed my name, like I was a child embarrassing him in public. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. "Dad, I'm asking you one more time, please leave. Or she does," he said. "You're being ridiculous." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just turned toward the funeral director, who had been standing nearby, and said, "Can you please show them out?" The director, bless him, looked uncomfortable but nodded. "Sir, ma'am, maybe it's best if you step outside." Debbie's face twisted in offense, and my dad looked humiliated. He grabbed her hand and muttered, "We're leaving." They walked out together, and the whispers followed them like smoke. Afterward, a few relatives came up to me, some saying I'd done the right thing, others saying I'd gone too far. My Aunt Marilyn, who'd always been the peacemaker, said, "Sweetheart, funerals are for the living, too. Maybe your father needed her there," I said. Mom deserved peace, even on her last day. That night, Dad called me. He didn't yell. His voice was calm in a way that made it worse. "I hope you're happy," he said. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone," I said. "You embarrassed yourself by not respecting what I asked." He was silent for a moment before saying, "You're punishing me for something that happened before you were even an adult," I said. "You might have moved on, Dad, but Mom never got the chance to." He hung up. Since then, he hasn't spoken to me. Not once. Eli said Dad texted him a week later, saying he was disappointed in how I handled things. It hurts. Of course it does. He's still my dad. But every time I start to feel guilty, I think about Mom. I think about her sitting in the kitchen years ago, hands wrapped around her coffee cup, pretending she wasn't crying. She would never have wanted that woman standing over her coffin pretending to mourn her. I did what she couldn't. I stood up for her. It might not have been graceful, And maybe it wasn't what everyone would call respectful, but it was honest. And in that moment, I think Mom would have been proud of me. Update. It's been about 6 months since the funeral, and honestly, the aftermath has been more complicated than I expected. The immediate drama of Dad showing up with Debbie is over, but the ripple effects are still very much alive. For starters, Dad hasn't reached out to me at all since that day. Eli told me he texted him a few times, mostly saying things like, "I hope she's not holding a grudge forever," and "I don't want this to ruin family stuff." But every time Eli brought it up, I could tell he was frustrated with Dad's insistence that his feelings mattered more than Mom's memory. Debbie, of course, has maintained radio silence. She hasn't called, hasn't sent flowers, hasn't acknowledged any kind of remorse. And I don't expect her to. For a while, I felt a mix of anger and, weirdly, relief. Anger because she acted like she had a right to be there, and relief because finally I could protect my mother's memory without navigating her manipulative charm. The extended family has been divided. Some aunts and uncles were supportive, quietly praising me for standing my ground. Others thought I went too far, saying things like, "It's been decades. People move on. Don't let this ruin your relationship with your dad." I get that. I do. But I can't reconcile moving on with allowing someone to undermine my mother's dignity on her last day. Eli has been my rock through all of this. He helped with the estate, with packing up Mom's house, and even with sorting through Dad's stuff that he left behind years ago. He's been very clear with me that he supports whatever boundaries I need to set with Dad and Debbie. I honestly don't think I could have survived this period without him. Socially, I've noticed I've started keeping my distance from Dad's side of the family more. Invitations to dinners, holidays, and birthdays now come with a mental checklist. Will Debbie be there? Will Dad argue if I set boundaries? It's exhausting, but necessary. I've realized that grieving Mom shouldn't mean subjecting myself to more emotional turmoil from people who clearly haven't changed. Therapy has helped a lot, too. Talking through my feelings, the anger, guilt, and confusion, has helped me see that my reaction at the funeral wasn't overblown. It wasn't about punishing Dad or Debbie. It was about honoring Mom. And that's allowed me to start moving forward without carrying the weight of their entitlement. One unexpected thing. I've actually started writing letters. Not to send, but just as a way to process everything. A letter to Mom, a letter to Dad, a letter to Debbie. Sometimes I read them out loud when I'm alone in my apartment. And it's the most liberating thing I've done in years. I get to say exactly what I want without interruption, judgment, or manipulation. There have been moments of weakness. Of course, around the holidays, Dad texted me again, saying something like, "It would be nice if you could forgive and forget." I didn't respond. Part of me wanted to call him, to explain why forgiveness isn't about forgetting. But I realized he wouldn't listen. He wants to hear what he wants, not the truth. Instead, I spent that Christmas with Eli, Lena, and a few close friends. We cooked, we laughed, and I didn't feel the need to worry about whether anyone would disrespect my mother's memory. That peace was worth more than any attempt at reconciliation I could imagine with Dad right now. I've started thinking long-term about what this means. There will always be a part of me that misses my dad. The little girl who wanted her dad to be her hero. But I've learned that sometimes being a daughter doesn't mean letting someone step over your mother's memory, or your boundaries, to feel comfortable in their own skin. Honestly, I feel stronger now than I ever have. I've faced some ugly truths about my family, set hard boundaries, and stood up for someone who can't speak for herself anymore. That's not something I take lightly. At this point, I'm not sure if Dad will ever fully understand why I acted the way I did, but I've accepted that I don't need him to understand. I just need to know I honored Mom, and knowing that has given me a clarity I didn't have before. Life is quieter without their drama, but it's real. It's mine, and I've started to rebuild. Friendships, routines, little joys. Around the people who respect me, who respect Mom, and who don't come with strings attached. It's not perfect. I still think about the what-ifs sometimes, but I also think about the way Mom always encouraged me to stand firm in what I believed was right. And in that sense, I haven't just survived this, I've grown. Final update. It's been over 3 years since my mom passed, and a lot has changed. Most importantly, I've found a sense of peace I didn't think was possible in the immediate months after the funeral. Standing up to Dad and Debbie wasn't easy, and the fallout was messy, but in hindsight, it was necessary. Dad and I still haven't had a real conversation. He calls or texts on birthdays or holidays sometimes, but it's always brief, formal, and distant. He never apologized for bringing Debbie to Mom's funeral or for his behavior afterward, and I've stopped expecting it. I realize that closure doesn't have to come from him. It comes from me. Eli and I have continued to lean on each other. He's been my anchor throughout. From sorting through Mom's belongings to navigating Dad's sporadic attempts at contact. Over time, we started visiting Mom's favorite spots together. The little coffee shop she loved, the lake where she used to take me on weekend picnics, and even her favorite botanical gardens. It's become a way of keeping her memory alive while also reclaiming joy in my life. I've also noticed something subtle but important. My boundaries have become non-negotiable, not just with Dad and Debbie, but in all areas of my life: friends, coworkers, romantic relationships. I no longer allow people to manipulate me or make me feel guilty for doing what I believe is right. I can't describe how liberating it feels to finally trust myself fully. Speaking of romantic relationships, I met someone new about a year ago. Ryan. He's thoughtful, patient, and most importantly, he respects my boundaries without question. The first time I told him about the situation with Dad and Debbie, he didn't try to fix it or lecture me about forgiveness. He just listened, and when I finished, he said, "You did the right thing. It doesn't matter if your dad ever realizes it." That was the first time I felt completely validated outside of my own self-reflection. I've also had to navigate the tricky waters of family events. Holidays are still complicated because Dad and Debbie are part of that extended network. But I've learned to protect my space. I attend gatherings selectively, usually sticking to Eli, our cousins and close friends. If Dad or Debbie shows up, I leave early or stay engaged in conversations that exclude them. For the first time, I can enjoy family occasions without feeling the constant pressure of performing polite forgiveness for someone who has never acknowledged the hurt they caused. Over the past year, I've started writing again. Essays, short stories, even some personal reflections on grief, boundaries, and family. Writing has become a form of therapy, a way to process everything I've gone through while honoring my mom. In many ways, it's helped me transform pain into purpose. Interestingly, a few weeks ago, I ran into Debbie at a local bookstore. She looked surprised to see me, and for a second, I felt a pang of old anger. But I realized I didn't have to engage. I smiled politely, wished her well, and kept walking. That moment, more than any conversation, symbolized my growth. I no longer need validation from her or Dad to feel complete. And Dad, I don't know if reconciliation is ever going to happen. He may never understand why I made the decisions I did. But that's okay. I have accepted that some relationships are inherently limited by the choices people make, and that doesn't make them any less worthy of love or remembrance. It just means I have to protect my own well-being. The peace I've found isn't loud or dramatic, it's quiet and steady. It comes from knowing that I acted with integrity, that I honored my mother in the way she deserved, and that I've built a life that prioritizes respect, honesty, and love, both for myself and for those who truly matter. Every time I visit Mom's grave, I sit there for a while, sometimes laughing at a memory, sometimes crying, sometimes just sitting in silence. I talk to her about my life, about the choices I've made, about the people I've allowed into my world, and in those moments, I feel her pride, the kind that doesn't need to be spoken aloud. Looking back, I realize that the hardest, most uncomfortable choices are often the ones that define who we are. I could have let Dad and Debbie into the funeral, kept the peace, avoided conflict, but that wouldn't have been true to my mom, or to myself. Standing firm was painful, yes, but it also allowed me to grow into someone stronger, wiser, and more self-assured. Life isn't perfect, but it's mine. And for the first time in a long time, I can say that with confidence, without guilt, and without fear of judgment. Mom would have been proud, and that ultimately is enough. Stories number 11. I won a competition. My friends begged me not to join. I didn't think I'd be writing about this online. But after the fallout with my friends, I need to get it off my chest. I'm 27, and I've always been competitive in small ways, not maliciously. I just like to push myself. My friend group, though, has always been more chill. We hang out, play board games, go to trivia nights, and nobody really keeps score. That's usually how I like it too, but recently, a local gaming company announced a citywide esports tournament for a new online game. The prize? $5,000 cash, plus tickets to a regional championship. I was instantly hooked. I spent weeks practicing, perfecting strategies, reading forums, watching streams. The whole deal, my friends. Ryan, Chloe, and Jared knew I was interested. They begged me not to enter. It's just a silly competition, Chloe said. It'll ruin the fun if you take it seriously, Jared warned. You'll just make us look bad if you win, Ryan added. Seriously, Megan, don't do this. Just let it be casual. I thought about it. I really did. But the more I waited, the more I realized I wanted this. I wanted to push myself and see what I could do. It felt unfair to deprive myself just because my friends were afraid of losing, or afraid of how I might perform. So I entered. I didn't tell them exactly when, just that I was considering joining. The first round was easy. I qualified quickly and moved on to the semi-finals. By this point, Chloe, Ryan, and Jared were glued to the livestream, pretending to be casual about it but asking nonstop how I was doing. I won the semi-finals, which automatically put me in the finals that weekend. That's when things got messy. I invited them over to watch the finals. I thought it would be fun. They were tense, whispering to each other, clearly anxious about seeing me win. During the match, I played carefully, strategically but aggressively. I knew exactly how far I could push without making mistakes. By the end, I won every single round, first place. The silence afterward was deafening. Chloe muttered something like, "I can't believe you did it." Ryan just got up and left without a word. Jared looked upset, like he was trying not to cry. I thought they'd be happy for me. I thought they'd cheer, even if they were competitive themselves. But instead, I got cold shoulders and passive-aggressive texts for days afterward. Chloe texted, "Congrats, I guess. But seriously, you didn't have to win like that." "We asked you not to join," Ryan said. "Not mad, just disappointed. It feels weird seeing you take this so seriously when we begged you not to." Jared didn't even text. He just unfriended me on social media. I tried to explain. I said, I wanted to challenge myself. It's not about you guys, it's about me. I respect that you didn't want to compete, but I can't ignore my own goals just to keep everyone comfortable, Chloe replied. It doesn't feel that way. It feels like you just wanted to crush us. You always have to be better. And that hurt? I didn't see it that way. I honestly didn't even beat them. They never entered. But somehow my victory became a personal betrayal to them. The next week, they stopped inviting me to hangouts. They didn't tell me outright, but the texts stopped. The calls stopped. I tried reaching out, suggesting we meet for coffee, but every time they gave me excuses, busy, tired. Maybe next week. It's been 3 weeks now. I've lost track of how many messages I've sent that went unanswered. I don't know if I should apologize or just let them be. I feel proud of myself for winning, but I also feel lonely. This group was my friends for almost a decade, and now, because I won a tournament they didn't want me to enter, it feels like I've been exiled. I keep replaying everything in my head. Did I really have to compete? Was it selfish to want to push myself even though my friends begged me not to? Or are they just being immature and letting jealousy get in the way? I thought friends would celebrate each other's successes, even if they were uncomfortable with them. But now I'm questioning if they really are my friends, or if they only like me when I don't outshine them. I don't know what to do. I don't want to give up on them. But I also don't want to apologize for being ambitious and winning fairly. Am I really in the wrong here? Update. It's been about a month since I won that tournament, and honestly, things with my friends are complicated. I've spent a lot of time thinking about whether I handled it wrong or if they're just overreacting. After the initial cold shoulder, I stopped sending multiple texts. I didn't want to come across as desperate or push them further away. Instead, I tried giving them space, hoping they'd eventually come around. But that didn't happen. Chloe was the first to reach out. About 2 weeks ago, she texted, "Hey, can we talk? I think we need to clear the air." I was cautiously optimistic. I suggested we meet for coffee at our usual cafe. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting awkwardly with her hands around a mug of tea. She looked nervous, which is unusual for Chloe, because she's usually the confident one in our group. We started talking, and the conversation was tense at first. She said she felt hurt that I had ignored their feelings by entering the tournament. I explained my perspective, that I didn't want to disrespect them, but I also couldn't ignore an opportunity to challenge myself. I reminded her that they never entered, so I technically wasn't competing against them. She paused, then admitted that it wasn't really about me beating them. It was about feeling left out. They had a vision of us being casual, fun, competitive only in games we all played together, and my winning in a more serious setting broke that idea. She also confessed that Jared and Ryan were struggling more than she realized. That was when I realized part of the problem. They were projecting their insecurities onto me. I didn't set out to make anyone feel bad. I just wanted to compete and test myself. But by winning, I became a symbol of something they were uncomfortable facing, that I might outgrow the safe bubble they had built. After talking with Chloe, I reached out to Ryan. He was more resistant, taking a few days to reply. When we finally met, he admitted that he was envious, not of me personally, but of the way I could commit and succeed at something they weren't ready to try. We talked honestly about boundaries, expectations, and how friendship doesn't mean suppressing each other's ambitions. Jared, on the other hand, has been the hardest. He hasn't reached out, and I don't think he's ready yet. I sent a message, just a simple, "I hope we can talk when you're ready." I never meant to hurt anyone. I haven't gotten a reply yet, and I've stopped expecting one immediately. The past month has been emotionally exhausting, but also enlightening. I've realized that my friends' reactions weren't entirely about me. They were about their own fears and insecurities. That doesn't make it easy to deal with, but it does help me separate my actions from their feelings. I still feel proud of winning, and I don't regret entering the tournament. I learned a lot about myself, my resilience, my focus, and my ability to handle pressure. But I've also learned that friendship isn't always easy. It requires patience, honesty, and sometimes distance to let emotions settle. For now, I'm giving everyone time, including myself, to process. I hope that eventually we can rebuild the friendship without resentment. I also hope they'll see that my ambition isn't a threat, just a part of who I am. It's weird, because I feel both strong and vulnerable at the same time. I know I did nothing wrong technically, but I also understand why they felt upset. Balancing that has been tricky, but I think it's part of growing up, learning that sometimes friendships are tested in unexpected ways. In the meantime, I'm still practicing, still competing, but more aware of how my choices impact others. Not to the point of suppressing myself, but enough to respect the relationships that matter to me. I don't know when Jared will come around, or if we'll all ever be completely normal again. But for the first time since the tournament, I feel like there's a path forward. One where I can win, they can be comfortable, and we can still enjoy our friendship, eventually. Final update. It's been about 6 months since that tournament, and I finally feel like I can take a deep breath about the whole situation. The past half year has been a roller coaster, but we've started to rebuild some sense of normalcy in my friend group. After my last update, Chloe and Ryan both reached out and started hanging out again. Chloe and I started scheduling regular game nights, just like we used to, where nothing serious mattered and the competition was friendly. Ryan took longer, but eventually, he admitted that he had been holding on to feelings of jealousy and inadequacy. Seeing me dedicate so much time and win made him realize he wasn't pushing himself in the same way. Once he acknowledged that, it was easier for him to separate his feelings from our friendship. Jared, however, remained distant. He still hasn't responded to my messages, and I don't know if he's avoiding me or just needs more time. I've learned to accept that I can't control his response, and I have to respect his space. I still hope that one day he'll reach out, but I'm no longer waiting anxiously for it. Interestingly, this whole situation has actually strengthened my confidence. Before, I used to worry a lot about how my competitiveness would affect others, or if I was being too much. Winning that tournament and dealing with the fallout showed me that it's okay to pursue my goals. Even if some people feel uncomfortable, I don't have to downplay my ambition to make anyone else feel safe. The dynamic with Chloe and Ryan has actually improved. We've learned to communicate better, to acknowledge feelings without letting them control the relationship. For example, when we play games now, I'm mindful not to rub victories in, and they're learning to cheer for me without resentment. We joke about the syrup incident of the friendship world, referring to my tournament win, and it makes things lighter. I've also realized that winning wasn't a betrayal. It was a reflection of my dedication and skill. I didn't enter to hurt anyone or prove superiority. It was personal growth, pure and simple. Accepting that has been liberating. My friends have all expressed appreciation for my honesty and commitment, and it's slowly rebuilt trust. There's still some tension with Jared, but the rest of us are cautiously optimistic that one day, all 4 of us will be back to the tight-knit group we used to be. This whole experience taught me a few important lessons. True friends will eventually understand and respect your ambitions. Even if they feel threatened at first, some relationships take time to repair. And that's okay. Your personal goals are valid, and you don't owe anyone compromise when it comes to pursuing them, within reason, of course, and with respect. In the end, I don't regret entering the tournament. I grew as a person, learned how to handle conflict, and discovered who my real supporters are. My friendship group isn't perfect anymore, but it's evolving. And honestly, I think it's stronger because we've been through something uncomfortable and survived it together. I'm proud of my victory, proud of how I handled the fallout, and cautiously hopeful that even Jared will eventually come around. This experience wasn't just about winning a tournament. It was about learning how to stand up for myself without losing the people I care about. So yeah, I beat my friends in a competition they begged me not to join. And while it caused some hurt feelings, I think we're on the path to reconciliation sometimes. Growing apart a little is exactly what's needed to grow stronger together. Stories number 12. My boyfriend laughed when I told him I didn't want a cheap engagement ring. And now I don't know if I can marry him. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to write one of these posts. But I guess that's what happens when something in your relationship cracks in a way you didn't see coming. I'm Lauren, 28, and I've been with my boyfriend Ryan, 30. For almost 4 years, we've lived together for the past 2. Share a dog, split the bills. All that domestic stuff that makes people assume an engagement is right around the corner. And honestly, it was. Or at least it felt like it was. Until last week. We'd been talking about marriage for a while. It wasn't some big, dramatic proposal conversation. It was more like the kind of thing that happens over takeout or while folding laundry. When we get married, or at our wedding we should, that kind of talk. We both wanted it, or so I thought. The first time the topic of rings came up, we were out at dinner with our friends Maggie and Chris. Maggie had just gotten engaged and was showing off her ring. A simple but beautiful solitaire, maybe 1.5 carats. Everyone was complimenting it, and then Ryan joked, "I'm glad Lauren doesn't care about that stuff. She's not materialistic," I laughed. But it felt weird, because while I'm not shallow, I do care about that stuff a little, not because I want to show off, but because it's symbolic, you know? A ring isn't just a rock, it's something you wear every day for the rest of your life. So later, when we were home, I said, "Just so you know, I do care about the ring. Not that it has to be huge, but I want it to be special." Ryan looked at me like I'd just confessed to a felony. "Wait, really? You want one of those big diamonds?" I said, "Not necessarily big, but I'd like it to be good quality. Something classic, maybe 1 or 2 carats, depending on what we can afford." He started laughing. Not meanly, but that kind of laugh people do when they think you're being ridiculous. He said, "Babe, do you know how much those cost? You can get something just as nice for way less." I was thinking we could do, like a $500 ring. Tops. I thought he was kidding. I even laughed along for a second. Then I saw his face. He wasn't joking. 500? I repeated. "Ryan, you spend more than that on your phone upgrades." He shrugged. "Yeah, but phones are useful. Rings are just jewelry." And that's when something in me twisted. It wasn't about the number. It was about what it represented, I said. "You realize that this is supposed to be a lifelong symbol, right?" "It's not just an accessory," he said. "It's a waste of money. I don't understand why people go broke over a shiny rock." I told him it wasn't about going broke. It was about putting thought and effort into something meaningful. He rolled his eyes and said, "So, if the ring isn't expensive, it means I don't love you enough?" That wasn't what I said, but he turned it into that anyway. We didn't talk for the rest of the night. The next day, I tried to explain again. I told him I didn't want him to go into debt, but I wanted something that reflected care. That if he saved up a little, or picked something timeless, I'd treasure it forever, he said. "You're too practical to care about that stuff." I don't get where this is coming from. It was coming from the fact that I've been the practical one our entire relationship. I'm the one who keeps our budget, who reminds him to pay bills, who plans the groceries, who books the vet appointments. I'm the adult. He's the dreamer, the one who forgets to move his laundry for 2 days, but still talks about someday owning a lake house. So yeah, maybe I wanted a moment where he was the one planning something thoughtful, but instead, he kept doubling down later that week. He sent me a link to a budget ring website and said, "Look, this one's only $280, and it's cute." It was literally a gold-plated ring with a cubic zirconia stone. I said, "Ryan, that's not even real gold." He said, "Nobody will know the difference." And I just stared at him. Because that sentence summed up everything that's been bugging me about our relationship lately. Nobody will know the difference. Like appearances are enough. Like good enough is fine as long as it looks okay from the outside. It's how he lives. Paycheck to paycheck. Doing the bare minimum at his job because it pays the bills, but never thinking long term. It's how he treats relationships too. He loves me, but he doesn't plan for me. He assumes I'll always be there. We've been together 4 years, And I've never felt this distant from him. When I talked to my friend Natalie about it, she said, "It's not about the ring, it's about effort. He's showing you what kind of husband he'll be." And I think she's right, because it's not that I need a $10,000 diamond. I'd honestly be fine with a sapphire or a vintage ring from a pawn shop if it meant he thought about it, saved for it, made it meaningful, but he didn't. He laughed. I told him last night that I wasn't sure I wanted to keep talking about marriage right now. He looked blindsided. "Over a ring?" he asked. I said, "It's not about the ring. It's about what the ring represents. You don't get it," he said. "I don't get why you're suddenly acting like some high-maintenance influencer." And that stung. Because I'm not high-maintenance, I've never asked him for anything extravagant. I drive a used Honda. I do my own nails. My idea of a fancy date night is Olive Garden. But when it comes to this, I can't shake the feeling that I deserve more than a man who thinks love is about what's cheapest. We haven't broken up yet, but it feels like we're circling that drain. He's been quiet and short with me. Like I embarrassed him by wanting more. And maybe I did. Maybe I held up a mirror to the part of him that doesn't want to grow up. I keep thinking about something my dad told me when I was a kid. He said, "When someone shows you how much effort they're willing to put into something important to you, that's how they'll handle everything else that matters." And I think that's what scares me the most. Because if this is how he approaches forever, what happens when it's a mortgage, or kids, or an emergency? Does he shrug and say, "Nobody will know the difference"? I love him. I really do. But love isn't enough if you're the only one thinking about the future. So here I am, sitting on the couch, staring at our dog sleeping between us, wondering if it's cruel or smart to end things before he actually buys that $280 ring. Because the truth is, I don't want to spend my life explaining to the person I love why I deserve to be considered. Maybe that makes me selfish, or maybe it just makes me done pretending cheap and thoughtful are the same thing. Update. I broke up with Ryan over the ring, and it was harder than I expected. It's been about 3 weeks since I finally ended things with Ryan, and I honestly didn't know how much it would hit me. I thought I was ready. I'd made up my mind, I'd rehearsed my words, I'd told myself over and over that this was about more than a ring. But nothing prepares you for how it actually feels to walk away from someone you love. The day I told him, I picked a neutral spot, a small coffee shop in town that we used to go to sometimes. I didn't want the argument to be in our apartment, where everything would feel permanent, or in his car, where it would feel like I was boxed in. I just needed space. When he saw me sitting there, he smiled like everything was fine. That smile almost broke me, but I shook my head and forced a small smile back. I ordered a coffee, and then he asked, "So, what's this about?" I took a deep breath and said the words I had been circling for weeks. "Ryan, I don't think we can get married. I can't see a future where the person I love laughs at what's important to me." He blinked, then laughed. That same laugh that used to make me feel like we were inside a bubble of safety now felt sharp. "Seriously? Over a ring?" "No," I said, almost yelling because I couldn't contain it. "Over a ring, yes, but also over everything it represents. Effort, thought, care, responsibility. The willingness to meet me halfway. You've shown me you don't understand that, and I can't ignore it anymore." He went quiet. Then he said, "Lauren, I love you. I didn't think it mattered so much." "That's the point," I told him, and it hurt to say it. It does matter. Everything matters. How you handle small things tells me how you'll handle big things. And I don't think you're ready for that kind of life with me. For a moment, he looked like he might argue, but he didn't. He just nodded and said quietly, "I guess I can't argue with that." After that, it was awkward. I finished my coffee. He stared at the table. Neither of us said anything for a few minutes, which felt like hours. Then I said, "I hope you find someone who's okay with the way you see the world. I hope you're happy." And then I left. The walk back to my car felt surreal. I felt like the world had tilted slightly. Like I was floating above myself. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just felt hollow, a little proud, and completely terrified about what comes next. That night, I went home and told Abby and Josh what happened. They hugged me in turns, and Josh said, "Mom, you're stronger than he is." Abby nodded and said, "I always knew you'd pick yourself." I cried then. Not because I missed him. I missed the idea of us. I missed the life we had imagined together. I missed thinking we could make it work without confrontation or compromise. The next few days were the hardest. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had lost. I caught myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. Vacations, random snapshots of us laughing, silly selfies. It was like my heart was trying to hold onto a memory that didn't exist anymore. But slowly, things began to shift. I reached out to Natalie and told her everything. And she reminded me why I made the choice I did. She said, "Lauren, love isn't enough if it doesn't come with respect and effort. You deserve someone who gets that." I also started seeing my therapist more regularly, talking about the breakup, about my expectations, about why this hurt so much, helped me realize something crucial. Ryan wasn't wrong for thinking a 280 ring was fine. He was just incompatible with me in a fundamental way. Last week, I went back to the coffee shop, the same one where I broke up with him, and sat at the same table. I ordered the same drink. I didn't expect to feel closure, but I did. I realized I wasn't leaving that place sad anymore. I was leaving it proud. Abby came with me the next day, and we started looking at new rings for her imaginary wedding. She laughed at the absurdity of the designs. Oversized stones, rainbow-colored diamonds, rings shaped like animals. She's 15, but it felt symbolic. Life goes on. Joy exists even after heartbreak, and I wanted to remember that. I haven't spoken to Ryan since. Part of me hopes he finds clarity. Part of me doesn't care. The future feels wide open and frightening. But in a good way, I'm learning that sometimes walking away isn't losing. Sometimes it's choosing yourself, even when it hurts, and honestly, I feel ready for the kind of love that understands me, my values, my boundaries, the kind of love that isn't measured in dollars or effort shortcuts, but in intention, care, and respect. I still think about him sometimes. I always will. But thinking about him now doesn't hurt. It's just a reminder of what I want, and what I refuse to compromise, because in the end, the $280 ring didn't break us. The mismatch of values did, and that's a lesson I won't forget. Final update. 6 months after breaking up with Ryan, I finally feel like myself again. It's been about half a year since I ended things with Ryan, and I've been avoiding writing here because, honestly, I wasn't sure if I'd found any clarity yet, but now I can say with confidence that I have, and I want to share it. Partly to process it, partly because someone else out there might need to hear it. The first few weeks after the breakup were rough. I kept expecting some kind of magic resolution. Like suddenly my heart would stop hurting and I'd be free. But it didn't work that way. I felt hollow, anxious, guilty, for making the decision, for hurting him, for breaking the life we'd built in our small apartment. Some nights I cried so hard Abby came in and asked if I was okay. Josh would hug me silently. It's strange how kids notice things adults think they're hiding. Therapy was a lifesaver. My therapist helped me understand that my grief wasn't just about losing Ryan. It was about losing a version of myself that I thought I had with him. I mourned that imagined future, the home we'd decorate, the trips we'd take, the conversations we'd have over coffee on lazy Sunday mornings. And once I let myself mourn it, the healing started. I also started leaning more on my friends. Natalie and Maggie became my anchors. Maggie, who had been married a year by then, told me things I hadn't wanted to admit. "You didn't just break up over a ring. You broke up over respect, over effort, over wanting someone who's willing to meet you where you are." Hearing it out loud validated the feelings I'd been struggling to articulate. At first I avoided dating. The idea of trusting someone again felt impossible. But I also realized I didn't want to be alone forever. I wanted to be with someone who valued me the way I valued them, who understood what effort and consideration really mean. I learned that waiting and being patient with myself is not the same as settling. Abby has been my biggest teacher through all this. Watching her grow into her confidence has reminded me why I had to make the choice I did. She's never been the kind of teenager to bend for someone else's comfort. She's strong, funny, and self-assured. And she reflects back to me everything I've worked so hard to preserve in myself. She still refuses to wear dresses if she doesn't want to. And I cheer her on every time she asserts herself. It makes me proud. And also makes me feel like I did the right thing for both of us. Josh has been great too. He doesn't fully understand everything, but he notices tension. And he's been extra affectionate since the breakup. I realized that by choosing myself, I was also modeling healthy boundaries for him. You don't stay in situations that don't honor your values. You don't compromise who you are for someone else's convenience. Work has been a good distraction too. I finally took on a new project at my company that I'd been hesitant about before. It's challenging, demanding, and sometimes exhausting. But it feels rewarding. I realize that personal growth can't happen in a vacuum. It comes from pushing yourself to do things that matter to you. And then, last month, something unexpected happened. I met someone, Ethan, at a friend's small dinner party. He's kind, thoughtful, and doesn't make assumptions about what I want in life. He listened when I talked about my breakup, didn't judge, and even laughed with me when I complained about how ridiculous some dating expectations are. Most importantly, he asks questions, shows curiosity, and treats my opinions as valuable. It's a subtle difference from Ryan, but it's everything. I'm not rushing into anything. I'm still cautious, still protective of my heart. But I feel alive in a way I haven't in years. I feel seen. I feel respected. And for the first time in a long time, I feel ready to imagine a future with someone who actually understands what love means. The best part? I don't regret leaving Ryan, not even a little. That decision has allowed me to reclaim my sense of self, my confidence, and my ability to demand respect. I know now that love without respect isn't enough. You can love someone and still walk away if they consistently fail to meet you halfway. And that lesson, painful as it was, has made me stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Abby and Josh remind me of this every day. In their small victories, their laughter, and their quirks, they've shown me that choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you human. So yeah, 6 months later, I'm not only surviving, I'm thriving. I'm still cautious, still learning, but I'm also excited. I'm building a life on my terms, surrounded by people who lift me up instead of dragging me down. And that's a feeling worth more than any engagement ring, any relationship, or any imagined future I left behind. Because finally, I get it. Real love isn't about who spends more money or who gets their way. It's about care, respect, effort, and the willingness to grow together. Or, if necessary, apart. And that's exactly what I'm doing now.